What's that?
So,
All right. We're gonna call this meeting to order at 10:06 a.m. Sorry for the delay. The scope of this meeting is to approve or deny an addendum to the approved contract between Sidock Group Incorporated and the Alcona County Commission on Aging. The addendum will revise the senior center to 30,000 square feet, including outdoor amenities, housing to phase 5, and a contract management procurement through Sidock Group. So again, that's the entire scope of this meeting, because this meeting is a special meeting called by motion from Director Schwanz. So the entire scope of the meeting will be that. So we're going to stay on task for that. I'm not going to allow any other discussions besides this particular discussion to happen. A note on here also, and you'll see it on your agenda if you have the agenda, is that all proposed fees from the Sidock Group will be paid from the grant award and not from senior millage. Approval of the addendum to the contract will happen, or the vote will happen at the end of the meeting. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll call, please?
Okay, Dolores Schlicker. Here. Dr. Turek. Jacqueline Schwanz. Here. Will St. John.
Here.
Mike Maturin.
Here.
Roland Lynch.
here,
Leroy.
Here.
And Pam. And of course, our executive director.
I'm here.
We also have some special guests here. They're going to be doing a presentation, Larry Molnar. And I forgot your first name. Brad Butcher. Thank you. And my brain just went. Thank you. I've known you for 2.5 years. My brain just went completely out. And they will be making the presentations today. Okay, I would accept the motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes.
Who moved it?
Okay. Will did, Jacqueline second.
Okay.
Any
Thank you.
discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Wait, I have a
Aye.
question.
Oh, I didn't see, sorry.
Question. I thought it was my understanding that last meeting we tabled the signing of the contract or approving that. And that's what we were going to bring up this meeting
That's
was, well, I'm seeing another addendum contract. Not the one that we voted to table and come back in 2 weeks after we discussed. So I don't understand, now we have another contract, and I don't think anybody's had time to go over this new contract.
I know I haven't. This is the first time I've seen it. It has 4 extra pages than the previous one, so I'm a little at a disadvantage to speak on this since I haven't had a chance to review it.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor of moving forward with the current agenda? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye.
Aye.
So 3 opposed, 4 were aye.
Take a roll call.
Yep, roll call vote, please.
Okay, Dolores. No. Dr. T.
No,
Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Will St. John.
Yes.
Roland Lynch.
No,
And Leroy.
No.
Pamela, yes.
And Mike, yes.
And Mike, yes. Okay. We have 5 yeas and 4 yes.
Okay. How does the board suggest we move forward? Leroy?
I would suggest we go ahead and discuss and vote on the original contract. And then go from there. If, you know, someone's gonna have an addendum, I mean, that's fine, but we have to have that in time where we can look it over and study it. I mean, I've been caught a little off guard today. I didn't expect any of this, hadn't been made aware of this, so.
I would second that motion. I've been caught more than a little off guard. I would say I've been blindsided. I would second that motion.
Okay, there was not a motion made. Leroy, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I make the motion that we continue with our original plan to vote yea or nay on the contract that we had before us from November.
Okay, Dr. Bob, would you like to second that? Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion?
We have the
Yeah.
people who made the addendum. Can we see what the changes were made? And have them explain, since that's what they're here to present about. And if we decide that the amended is, then we can make that decision after the presentation. Is that?
Any comments on that?
I would say that still doesn't give us time to go over the new contract.
My opinion would be that if we could continue on with our motion, acting on the contract that was before us last meeting and before us now. And then once that is completed, continue on with the presentation, because it sounds like they want to do another contract, a different contract. And we could give their presentation, but that would have to be acted upon the new contract at a later date.
Can I address? So let's make some clarification. It's not a new contract. It is an addendum, and please don't interrupt. It is an addendum to the existing contract that was already viewed by our attorneys.
Can you speak up, Lenny?
It's an addendum to their current contract based on a new scope of work that the planning committee met and adjusted the scope of work. So the addendum that it says at the top, it moved the community center square footage, it increased the community center square footage, and it moved the housing to a later phase. So those are the things that was already asked of the board in November in the language was, and I believe Will St. John made that suggestion, that the language be as such that the housing would not be prioritized, that the community center / senior center be prioritized in the language. They made that change. That's why you had a different contract. And then they spelled out exactly what you asked in the November meeting, that the housing portion would be put back to ensure that the senior center would be completed first, and that the money is allocated to, so they did exactly what you asked for. So then why then, when they're here, ready to explain the changes that you asked for, then you want to go back on something that we could have had a decision on back in November? I do not understand that logic, because what was the whole point of this meeting if we're going to vote on something that we could have voted on 2 weeks ago? So why not continue with what you asked for? I agree with Director Swan, is that they're here to talk to you and explain to you, where we are, where we're going, what's in the project, to remove all doubt. Or do we need to have a repeat from the last meeting?
Hold on, you're only allowed to speak twice during debate. And everyone has to have had a chance to speak before we move on. Does anyone else want to comment on that, Dolores?
Well, I just have a question. Are you now saying that you want to do the senior center first? And then down the road, 5 or 10 years, do the apartments? Or are you saying you want a community center, which I prefer a senior center, but are you saying build that first and put everything else on hold? Lenny?
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes.
clarify? So look at it as phase. So phase 1 will be construction of the senior / community center. You will find out what, based off of the planning project and the presentations of what is inside that community center. They're gonna go through square footage of the total breakdown of what's in the community center. So there won't be any questions. You'll know exactly what makes up that 30,000 square feet. That is going to be prioritized first because it doesn't require any additional funding sources. Right now, the housing project is moved to phase 5 pending additional securement of additional funding sources. But right now, with the money in hand, we're building the projects that are going to be prioritized. And in the last meeting, not the November meeting, the last meeting of the subcommittee, it was asked that the community center with outdoor recreation and amenities be prioritized. They also requested that senior housing be prioritized over multifamily housing. So this is the language that is now in the new addendum based on the subcommittee meeting that happened 2 weeks before I believe it happened on the 17th, before the board meeting, which triggered a new addendum, which got tabled to this meeting. So now you have everything that you've asked for explained out in the new addendum so that there is no questions of the direction that we're heading.
Are we going to be able to comment on what is in this community center? Are we going to be able to say, we want this, but we don't want that, and draw up our floor plan according to what the board wants?
I forgot to explain the rules as the Policy and Procedures Committee, by the suggestion of Dr. Turek, that we tighten up our floor debates so that each person has 10 minutes to make their argument. Is that what we went with 10 minutes, Dr. Turek? Yes. And then everyone else has a chance that's on the board has a chance to make their argument, and only then can somebody make the second round, okay? And then an additional 10 minutes, and then that's it, just twice during each subject matter, okay? So I'm not trying to shut you down, it's a valid question. I think it'll probably be answered by the presentations,
Okay,
but
And I would add to that, what just happened, her phrasing a question that should not be responded by the executive director. If she wants to phrase it as a question rhetorically, but he's already spoken twice, so that's not really what is
Well-
the way things should be happening. We want to limit cross table debate.
we definitely want to limit cross-table debate. I think by reason of clarification, I would allow what he just did, but not on a regular basis, because there's still some misunderstandings out there that need to be clarified. Okay, so we have a motion on the table, I think still.
Second round.
Does anybody, Leroy, I think you're,
Yes, I'd like to speak to that. I stand by my original objection, and I agree with Director Turk that we're still here to vote on the November 4th amended contract. After we get done with that, I am more than willing and happy to, hear any discussion or programs or whatever on any amendment, but we're not here to sign an amendment. We haven't had time to look at the contract. We've had no previous warning. Quite a blindside here. I would think the board should be told what's going to happen instead of just have all this dumped on us.
I would speak.
yes,
I agree with Director Karen that this contract has 4 different pages. It's completely in a different order. There's completely different numbers. It's completely omitted the construction, manager costs, the fees, a whole group of things that I was prepared to comment on. I'm happy that they've answered some of these questions, but I have not had time to look at this contract whatsoever. My understanding, and by the motion, I think we can confirm it on the video, was to vote on the original amendment, the original contract that came before us 2 weeks ago. I am not prepared for this at all. I'm more than happy to see a presentation so that we can further educate ourselves. But today, I believe we're voting on the motion, the contract that was tabled at the last meeting.
okay, any other comments from board?
I wonder if the Sidock Group, is still interested in the proposals, the contract that we talked about last time, and maybe moved to talk about it, if they have moved on to something else.
Any other comments?
I would like to see if they have continued with the one that we want to rehash. If in fact they've moved on to another one, and at least possibly hear their discussion to us, and then we can vote at another time after everyone's combed through the contract. You know, but I think, you know, unless the Sidock Group wants to pull that first one out that there were some problems with,
Mhm.
it's really moot to keep hashing and rehashing if we're not going to use that contract. That's my opinion.
Any other comments? Any other comments or discussion? One more time, any other comments or discussion? Okay, so we have the motion on the floor to move forward with voting on approval of the current Sidock, or not the current contract. Would you restate your motion for me, Leroy, please, just so we get it right?
My motion is that we move ahead with the original intent to either give an up or down on the November 4th amended version of the contract that we were given 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Everyone understand the motion? All right, so the current motion is to move forward in this meeting with looking at the contract that was put forward November 4th, and then voting on whether we should approve or not approve that particular contract.
You're still seconding, right?
Dr. Bob, is that
A yes vote would be to continue on with the previous contract, not vote on the one that we've been given today.
correct? Are you still seconding that motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all in favor? Let's do a roll call, please. Because I know we're gonna have one anyways.
Okay, Dolores,
Yes,
now yes means what?
That we are going to move forward with the
Okay.
November 4th.
Okay, Dr. T,
Yes,
Jacqueline,
No,
Will,
Yes.
Mike,
I don't vote unless there's a tie.
okay, Roland,
Yes.
Leroy, yes.
Yes.
After all that, it better be a
No.
yes.
I'm saying
for
no,
my own
because I don't
motion.
want to keep writing.
I've seen it happen, though.
You might.
Okay, what's the,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's only 2 no's.
2 no's? Okay. So we have 6 yays, 2 nays. The motion passes to continue on. This is basically an approval of an agenda, of the agenda to move forward. So, okay, so the agenda is approved to move forward based on the November 4th contract language. All right, public comment. We are going to go with our normal 2 minutes. That's the only reason I have my phone out. I forgot to ask that everyone please silence their phones. I have it out to do the 2-minute timing. Everyone will get a chance to speak, and then at the end of the meeting, there will be another time for public comment. So if you think of something or something strikes you during the meeting, you can make comment at that time. Would anyone like to address? Rick?
Just a couple quick comments. It's okay to stand up?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Go state your name and
Oh,
your township or city.
Queso, Ames Township, Lincoln.
Thank you.
I worked at GM for a lot of years on contracts, okay? Explain about contracts. Anytime you make an addendum to a contract, you have to treat it as a new contract. We did this for years at General Motors. It was charging a lot of products. Yeah, some of the verbiage is the same from the previous one, but you have to look at that and say, this is a new contract to make sure that the addendum matches what was in the original contract. So I just want to tell you guys that as far as contracts go, any addendum is a new contract. It's a comment from my experience. The second thing is, and I'll be quiet then, is that I think we need a very clear order of how this project's gonna go through. I've heard senior housing, senior center, community center, low income housing. I don't have a clear view as, of what exactly, and the public doesn't either. What are we exactly doing here? This is the Alcona County Commission on Aging, okay? I would think that anything that has to do with seniors, especially the senior center, because where we are now, should be number one. Absolutely. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Rick, and I think that will be answered at the end of this
Okay.
meeting for you. And I would like to point out, yes, we are the Commission on Aging, but even a 2-year-old is aging. So just, once you're born, you begin aging. I'm just trying to bring some light, chill out. We're trying to bring a little light. We get a little too serious. Go ahead. Sorry, your name and your,
Rich Bray, Harrisville, it's good to see you back.
yeah, it's good to see you.
And with all due respect, you can delegate your authority to the executive director, but you cannot delegate responsibilities as a board. The ACCOA is a public 501c3. This is seen in your IRS form 990. Only public 501s use that. A private 501 uses a 990 PDF or PF. And your 990 has to be made public has to be made available to the public in all circumstances if they ask for it. I do have that. And it states this is its mission or activity description: to provide services to enhance the life of the elderly of Alcona County. Each year, approximately 100 501c3s lose their ability to maintain that tax relief. One of the causes is operation outside state admission on your form 990. It is also a violation to use funds of the organization to finance a project outside the mission stated, even if the project is an act of charity. The loss of the 501c3 falls on the board of directors, not on your executive director. So all responsibilities still come back to you as a board. I'm glad Dr. Bob brought up MCL 15261, which is the law that governs the Open Meeting Act, and each violation quoted from page 6 of the Open Meetings Act, if you violate, may be found guilty of a misdemeanor crime and be held responsible, personally liable for not more than $500 per meeting. Again, that's the board's responsibility, not the executive directors. So again, I would ask that you, as the board of directors, Mr. President, and your board of directors, allow your board to lead this organization, not the executive director, in accordance with state and federal laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Bill Potter, Guston Township, Harrisville. I believe in my past, as president of the village for several years, when we tabled a motion, it was a motion like you guys tabled it from last meeting. Was there a motion today to untable that? And if so, who made the motion and who seconded? That is a violation of the Open Meeting Act. So was there a motion to untable the meeting from last meeting?
The motion, I believe, made by Director Schwan was to hold this meeting in order to deal with that.
Did they untable the motion from last meeting?
No.
No, apparently not.
Then you can't discuss that meeting until it's on table.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Hi, I'm Rachel Jameson. I'm a local resident from Harrisville. I'm here with 4 of my 5 children. Took a break from our homeschooling routine to come watch. I just wanted to remind the
Welcome.
board that we are taxpayers here. And although I know that the grant that has been given of $12.5 million is not from us directly here, it is from taxpayers somewhere. And I do want to show you our tax bill that arrived for our winter taxes. And we do pay $72.87 to ACCOA for what goes on here. And I also wanted to tell you that as well, my mother-in-law, who does not drive, pays $109 for her winter taxes to ACCOA. and a family that has 3 children under the age of 8 who live just north of here, they pay $250 on their winter taxes to a co-op. So we have a vested interest in knowing what's happening to our tax dollars here.
Absolutely. Thank you and welcome to your children. It's good to expose them to how these types of things work. I think it's a great learning experience for them. Thank you. Yes, Judy.
Judy French, Hairspell. I'm fairly familiar with how a board runs and how organizations are supposed to kind of run. Committees are not supposed to make the decision and move forward. They're supposed to make recommendations back to the board, and the board is supposed to make the decisions. So as far as my knowledge, this board hasn't been making the decisions. They've been putting it off on committees, and I think 3 people making a decision for the entire board is a little ludicrous. And it falls against the way, I'm not sure if it's an act or not, but I know it's not, you know, the way it's supposed to run. You know, the proper term is not with me at the moment, but as far as just hearing all this about the committee made this decision, the committee made this decision. Well, the committee's not to make the decision. The committee is to bring back a recommendation to the board, and the board is to make a decision, and it's to be recorded in minutes.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Lisa Turek, Harrisville. I just noticed on the first vote, Pam said 5-4, but I think there's only 8 people that voted, so I just want to make sure that it might have been 4-4 instead of 5.
It was 4-4, and then Mike had to vote.
Oh, and the
Making
first,
the
the first one,
for the
okay,
first
great, because I thought 5-4, I thought only 8 people. But if that includes Mike 2, 4, and 6, 8, that would still be 8. Oh, Mike had 2 votes, is what you're saying.
No.
No? I just wanted to double check, because I thought
5, 6, 7.
8, and the first vote you said was 5-4, which would be 9, so I wanted to make sure that there was only, it should have been 4-4, not 5-4.
Stan's not here today.
Right,
Right.
yeah,
So
so
we're,
that should have changed things also, because that wasn't a correct tallying of the votes. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for pointing that out. What do we have for that vote?
we had,
If there wasn't a tie, I shouldn't have voted. I thought it was a tie. That's
Yeah.
why I voted
then it would have been 5-3,
without my vote.
because there were 5 opposed.
No.
No, it's been 4-3,
4-3,
4-3.
7.
7 total votes unless I have to vote and break a tie.
Yeah, because you couldn't.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Anyone else? Yes.
I know from talking to past employees that if they didn't agree with whatever their bosses told them to, that they ran the risk of losing their jobs. And I'm just making a comment. I wonder how many people here, I saw you brought all your staff up, which was nice to meet them, feel differently about what's going on, but are afraid to say anything in fear of losing their jobs. Just a comment.
Thank you, Terry. Anybody else? Yes.
Aaron Sharp now from Lincoln. And what it's gonna take to wake up the whole board and realize we citizens do not want a partner. We need a senior center. It sounds like, just listening to you this morning, somebody's not doing their homework. So I don't know what's going on, but it's too bad you don't listen to the voice of the people. We do not want the apartments, just a new senior center. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone else? Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Curtis Township. So thank you. I just wanted to thank you for releasing the FAQ yesterday on your Facebook page. I reviewed it in detail. On page 6, there's a question on here about low-income housing tax credits. So my question here is, you're saying that you're not going to use low-income housing tax credit, which is excellent, but for these two paragraphs, things kind of roundabout way of answering this. What are you using if not low income housing tax credits? And if you are using something like, say, workforce housing tax credits or anything like that, how are you calculating the workforce? I went through Lincoln, yesterday, today, and I don't see a lot of now hiring signs. I'm worried that, say this project is totally completed, that there will not be enough jobs from that project. This construction is temporary, they come in, they build and they leave, that's not a real job, if you will. For the community, it's nice, but it's not a permanent thing. So I was wondering where the jobs are coming from, because the community center would only have so many, and most of the staff, I'm assuming from here would move there. And then the apartments really wouldn't need too much other than like maintenance. So I'm just kind of curious, if you are using, and I could be misunderstanding workforce housing tax credits, but I'm on a crash course on that. So I'm just kind of wondering if you're not using the low income housing tax credits, if you're using, what are you using? And if you are using workforce housing credits in lieu of.
Thank you for your well-timed comments. Actually, you're right at 0. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that most, if not of that, not all of that will be answered during the presentation, but if I'm not mistaken, so. Yes.
My name is Ed Bolanowski. I live in Spruce. I'm actually the co-manager of a company called South Development. We are currently getting ready to start a 200-unit complex in Ascota. To answer your question, Ascota Township is currently, in 2020 was 250 houses in the hole. The state of Michigan as a whole is 160,000 houses in the hole. So that means that the state built 160,000 homes. They still wouldn't have enough. Ascota right now figures they can build 600 homes and still not have enough to house for the people that are working at Clutter right now. Not counting the new engine plant, not counting the new hangar, not counting the 150 requisites that Clutter said, I'm not gonna hire because I don't have housing. So just kind of to let you know that you might not think housing is an issue, but it is a huge issue. It's a huge issue in pretty much every county in the state of Michigan, including all of northern Michigan. Alpena's hurting for housing. Ascota's hurting for housing. I'm not sure why you would think that in the middle of that, we would have plenty of housing, because we don't. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
can I comment on that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. I agree. We need housing. Absolutely. I don't think there's any disagreement of that. However, we are the senior center. We have no authority to build houses. That is up to other organizations. I would love to see those organizations come in and build homes. We need them, no doubt. I don't think anybody here is against that. Our whole objective here is we are the senior center. We want a senior center, standalone senior center to take care of the seniors of this county. That's what it all comes down to. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
I would piggyback onto that if we do something that is not in our bylaws, we risk losing our 501c3 tax exempt status. Building housing is not in our bylaws. I'm concerned that we're jeopardizing our tax exempt status.
Mr. President, can I add a point of clarification?
Yeah.
When you submit for grants, you submit your bylaws. The review committee that reviews your grants read your bylaws. They read your scope. They investigate to see if this is within your scope of practice and your mission and vision. We received $12.5 million. So obviously, the clarification of if we are able to do this within the community hub is within the scope of vision, because the people who allocated the funds read those same documents that you're commenting on and determined that is in the scope and vision and mission directive of ACCOA.
I'm Jerry Maricos Township. As I'm observing what's going on here, one question, why is the director answering everything that you on the board should be answering? And up on what's going on. What he's doing is showing me that you guys aren't really up to grade to know what's really the hell's going on. That's my first observation. The second is, I've been around enough to know, to see a lot of stuff. And what's happening here? Everybody's looking at all that money, all the things we're gonna do with all that money. And they've lost point of what is the whole object that started this whole thing. A modern, up-to-date senior center. Not involving in the community centers and community hubs and all kinds of names that you can put on housing, affordable, poor housing, whatever. You know, like it's been brought up before. You folks on this board are responsible, not the director. You are responsible for all of this and all these decision making and all these hundreds of thousands of dollars are being thrown around here. And sir, man, you folks, if you don't understand what you're doing, then that's fine. There's no accusation. But you ought to be smart enough to finally hire somebody that can tell you what the hell's going on.
They did.
You need to maybe hire an outside attorney, a good one, not $100 an hour guy. I mean, a good attorney. To go over all these contracts.
Yeah.
Read off what benefit are those contracts to the senior centers of Alcona County. And also, I would suggest to protect yourselves, protect yourself, folks. You better get an outside auditor who knows their business, not a cheap one. And go over these contracts and go over all the money. Not now. This is bleeding over, not just from the grant. It's starting to bleed over into the village and all these other areas. And if you folks don't see this, what the hell's going on? You have to make up your mind who's in charge here. Because in the end, I'm sorry, keep my fingers back. In the end, you folks are going to be ultimately responsible for the good or the disaster.
Yeah.
And you have to think about this. Number one, you better hire a real crackerjack attorney or law firm to go look at all these contracts and get into the nitty gritty of all of them. And besides, we don't even know who wrote the dadgum contract. And you don't know whether it protected you or not. You really don't. You're taking the word of the director.
You're 2 minutes.
So
up.
now I'm quiet but I wasn't gonna say nothing, but I'm seeing this going on.
Gary, your
And
2
like I
minutes
said,
are up. Thank you.
sometimes
Sorry, when I went to start my clock, it didn't start.
Give it to somebody.
Yeah.
Mr. President, can I yield my time to Rich?
Absolutely.
Again, Rich Ray, Harrisville Township, and to comment on the director, the executive director's comment. The grant givers are not the IRS. They cannot decide whether or not the IRS takes away your 501(c) by operating outside your stated mission. And that again is the board's responsibility, not the executive directors. I did not want to bring any of this up. I do not want to be seen as someone who doesn't want the community to prosper. I do. And like Mr. Director Perrin said, we need housing. But there is an organization that's a private 501(c)(3) in District 9 that can handle all of this. And it's called NEMSCA. They should be the one building the housing. And if they build it in Lincoln on that site, so be it. I'm not against the housing. I'm not against homeless centers. We need those too. My concern is that you've lost touch with what your mission is. A community center is a community center. If you want to call it the Alcona County Commission on Aging Senior Center and invite the community, that's great. And I'll stand behind you in all those things 100%, as long as the right organization is doing the right thing. I yield back.
Thank you, Rich.
Caitlin Lincoln, I am the in-home service coordinator, and I think it is insulting to accuse the ACCOA employees that we are intimidated or instructed by our executive director. We are a group of independent workers who have our own brains and think for ourselves. the things we say and feel and the things that we agree with come from our own brains. We are not intimidated by a man that we work with every day. So.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yes.
Hello, my name is Marjorie Tate, Weston Township. I've been kind of new to this story, but I've been listening for the last couple of years. I know that there's been a lot of planning, a lot of talking about this project. But what I'd like to do is just bring up one thing that people are missing, I think. I'm not hearing people talk and recognize that there is a medium age in this county. And I'd like to, does anybody know what the medium age of residents in this county is? Okay, who's gonna benefit the most from anything that happens in this county? 65-year-old people, maybe and older, for the most part. So what I'm saying is that whatever we can get, whatever we can conjure up, wherever the sources are, let's work together and listen to the plan. It doesn't hurt, because all of us are gonna benefit from anything that happens in Alcona County. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being involved in coming. Anybody? Yes.
Pam McKinnon, I'd like to address what you said because I think you're coming from my Facebook post. I did not point out that we think that you are not able to think for yourself. Everybody in this room appreciates every job you do every single day. So you work for the senior center. We want the senior center. That's all fine. I'm glad you're getting paid to sit up here through this meeting for the first time ever since I've been attending any meeting. It was well planned. Great job. Fact is, we appreciate you. Don't take the post from Tony on Facebook for what I said. Second of all, you all stress the fact that this is grant money. $12.5 million is gonna go like that. Like that. Half the people in this room might not even understand what $12.5 million is. When are you gonna start using the millage money, realistically? If you don't do it this year, is it gonna be next year, or is it gonna be the next year? Because the 12.5 isn't gonna do the project. You wanna stick to a senior center? I think you could do it on a budget of 12.5. As far as the housing market, I have houses for sale. Everywhere I drive by, there's houses for sale. So as far as Coletta, let the people buy a house like everybody else has to do. Sorry, they're out there. They don't want to buy them. They don't want to live in Lincoln and drive to Ascota. I'm glad Ascota is doing great. And it's not saying we don't want housing. I'm for housing too. I'm for people. I'm for everything except the. Anyways, my 2 minutes is probably up.
Oh, you have 9 more seconds.
Oh, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Pam. All right, any other questions or comments? I mean, Rosie.
I think like it's been said, I don't think anybody is against, quote, the project, if the project is done by the organization that should be doing it. And I believe that Lenny's got a heart for young people. He's got a passion for young people, and that's fine. He needs a passion for seniors that I don't see. We need somebody in the senior center to run the senior center for the seniors that has a passion for seniors. A lot of the people that are no longer working for the senior center had a passion for seniors. They loved their jobs and they are no longer here. That's unfortunate, but we need that for the senior center. We need a standalone senior center for the seniors. The hub is fine for everyone else, but we have 55 and older housing projects because seniors don't necessarily want to live next to a young family. They don't necessarily want to live with apartments with young families. They don't necessarily want that. The idea that all seniors are okay with the basic language of the younger generation, and okay. The 4-letter bombs aren't really well accepted by seniors. They don't want to be exposed to that 24/7. So let's give the seniors their standalone senior center. and do the community center for the community. So that anybody, if the seniors want to go there, great. But if they don't want to, they shouldn't be forced to do their services in an environment where they're not comfortable.
Thank you, Rosie. Any others? Any other comments? Back there, sorry. My eyes are not working today.
Sarah, Harrisville Township. I'm sorry, but I have 3 comments to the board. 1, new people entering positions in local government need to have a copy of Robert's Rules of Order, period. And it's up to the board to make sure they get those. Secondly, I used to be the manager of human resources at Coletta. People in Coletta drive 100 miles to get to work. Housing in Ascota, Talbot, Alpena, Harrisville are beneficial to those people. Those people bring revenue to our county. Thirdly, older people love younger people. It keeps them young. I'm a grandmother. I love being around my my grandchildren. To say that old people to define old people as needing to have a house or a room to live in, period, is just erroneous. And the last thing I'll say is, I see these gentlemen here, and I would like to get on with things. It's time to move forward in this community. Move forward, have an open mind, get some forward thinking skills here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Yes.
I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Shauna Morris. I am the NEMT Transportation Coordinator. This last month, we did 78 transportations, getting folks to their much needed doctor appointments. 54 of them were seniors who have no means to have a vehicle. They don't have friends, they don't have family. These are people, these are seniors. And I am so blessed and so humbled to work for an agency that rolls their sleeves up. We bust our butts every single day. Nobody should be without the basic necessities. We live in a rural desert. We don't have Uber. We don't have Lyft. We don't have mass transportation. And yes, there are times where we might have to go all the way to Port Huron because that's where the specialists we have. Specialists are downstate. They're not up here. As of now, we take 4 clients 3 days a week for dialysis so they can get their life-sustaining treatments. We will go where the need is. My youngest transport, 5 years old, needed to go to Port Huron. Mom didn't have a vehicle. We got her there. So she could get her approval to get a surgery.
10 seconds left. Okay. Thank you, Shauna. Karen.
My name is Karen Hughes. I am an employee of this agency. I do not live in this county. I am the food bank coordinator. I drive the yellow box truck, excuse me. And sometimes I deliver food to individual houses. Most of the time, the people needing food come to me. What I have observed since I started in May of this year in this position is that 95% of the people that come to my, what's called a mobile pop-up, usually it's at the fairgrounds, are 1- and 2-person households. I'm guessing at their age to be over 60. Most are extremely grateful. They want to give me a hug. Before Thanksgiving, I was delivering 5 boxes. When I got to the first individual's house, she asked me to come in and have a cup of coffee, which I would have loved to do. Unfortunately, I still had 4 other boxes all over the county. I grew up in northern Michigan. Not in this county, but very close. I have been taught since I was little to ask questions. If I don't understand or don't agree with something, I need to find out, do I not understand it correctly? Am I thinking differently?
10 seconds left.
I would encourage you all to listen to these gentlemen's presentation, because I think a lot of misconceptions have been put out,
Thank you, Karen.
and that would encourage it.
Anybody else? Yes. Go ahead, Rick.
You know, I'm just gonna say, these are very good heartfelt stories, okay? They're great. Here's the thing that you've all said, when you said it, besides you, that knows. You're helping seniors. They're putting seniors food. The seniors appreciate it. Okay, transportation is probably 95% seniors. If not, I don't know what 5-year-old want to transport, but that's great to do that. It's seniors, okay? That's what I'm saying. I'd like to say, well, that's great, and I'm so glad, but it's seniors should be the focus number.
Thank you, Rick. Any others? Okay, thank you all for your public comment. We need to have or I would accept to have a motion to untable the tabled motion from last meeting.
I'll make a motion on the table, motion that we made last meeting.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded, discussion? Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, let's do a roll call.
Dolores,
Yes.
Dr. T,
Yes.
Jacqueline,
Yeah.
Will,
Yes.
Roland,
Yes,
Leroy,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
It's unanimous. That motion has been untabled to be dealt with at this meeting. Okay, moving on to our project presentations. Larry, would you like to go? This is Larry Molnar, and he'll introduce himself and his business.
Okay, my name's Larry Molnar. I'm a recent retiree of the University of Michigan. I was there for 35 years, directing the Institute for Research on Labor, Employment, and Economy. I grew up on a small farm, 150-acre cattle farm. So I had to work out there, getting up at 5 in the morning and working until 8 o'clock at night. So I understand rural areas and what you folks are facing. I'd like to make just a couple comments before I start my presentation. In addition to the data that I'm going to give you, and these are numbers that are derived from the thousands of surveys that went out. Not all of them were returned, but there was an awful lot of information that came back to us. We worked with NEMCOG, Northeast Michigan Council of Governments. They had some reports, the Alice report. We conducted interviews, we had focus groups. This was all during the pandemic, so we didn't have town hall meetings, gatherings like we have here, but we did the best we could under circumstances. I'm also going to be drawing a very clear demarcation between housing and the senior center, community center / community center, however you want to define it. We didn't deal with housing, we just dealt with the community's response to a survey about if we have a senior community center, what do you want to have in it? And also, I have some demographics that I'm going to give you up front. These come from the US Census. So this is the stuff that we came up with. This is stuff that came out of the 2020 census. And it paints a bit of a bleak picture, but it's reality. And a few people have alluded to it. So let's face the facts, and then we can start from there. So, going back to the 2000 census and then the 2010 census, that's 10 years, then the 2020 census. Next slide. We have an aging population. Talked about that a little bit here in comments. We have a population loss in the past 20 years. We have an out-migration of youth. The population is getting older and younger people are leaving. The median age of Alcona County, according to the census, is 59 years. The median age in Michigan is 38 years. And in the US, it's 38.1 years. So there's some discrepancy here in terms of population and aging and what happened that need to be remedied and can take decades of where we start. Compared to the state of Michigan, we have 20% fewer people in Alcona in the prime voting age of 18 to 64. We have more than twice as many people over age 65 compared to Michigan, twice as many in the county as in the 3 counties of Michigan. And then 2/3 of the number of children under 18 that is across the state of Michigan. Yet across the state of Michigan, we only have 2/3, so fewer children. Again, of migration of youth, and this also leads to fewer younger people entering the workforce who would be the taxpayers and what have you. So that's something that needs to be addressed. It needs correction if we're to advance it as a region. Median household in Alcona County is 43,000. That's 73% of the Michigan average. That's 59,000. It's 64% of the US median income of 67,000 per capita. In Alcona was 12,000. I mean 27,000. Michigan is 32,000. In Alcona, 16.3% of the population lives in poverty. In Michigan, it's 13.7. In the US overall, it's 12.8. Again, those are all demographics. And they're pretty stark, and I'm sure that some of it. So we did 4 surveys. The first one we did is Alcona County leadership. We used Alcona County leadership directory, board of trustees, the boards, what have you, sent out about 250 surveys in that directory of townships, et cetera, county commissioners. We did another survey, the general population that went out to just everybody that we could identify. We also did one of students and youth. The school district sent out copies to all of the parents of all of the children in the school district. And then we did one for the agricultural sector and one for entrepreneurship. We went to the county clerk's office in Harrisville and got all the DBAs, the doing business ad registrations for a 4-year period. So all the new businesses that have been started, we surveyed as many of those as we could to find out what their needs might be. So when we got into the leadership survey, we asked for is there a strong sense of community, and we used a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the least, 5 being the highest score. So sense of community 4.16. If you put it on a 10-point scale, that's about 8.2. So it's pretty high. Was a 2.33. So about half the respondents felt that there was a lack of activity for people, including youth and seniors. There was a comments that residents leave the community for activities and go outside the county because
there aren't, as many activities as people would like to see that are within the community. The community leaders told us that people in our county would have a high overall likelihood of using resources from a senior community center. 4.11, which is 10-point scale to about 8.3. Some of the services would be health and nutrition, classes and nutrition, wellness, fitness, agriculture, facilities for exercise, a farmer's market, fresh produce pickups. Again, a farmer's market ranked very high, both from community leaders and from the general population survey. The participation of people who go to a farmer's market was a 4.44 out of 5, about 85% of respondents said that they would use a farmer's market. An organized one that was regular and had a facility of some type. There would be programs and facilities and continuing education, those types of things. Got very high rankings from respondents on the survey. Just a note on how the survey was distributed. It was distributed at community events. I know I talked about the leadership survey going out. There were QR codes and links that were sent out with letters to the parents and students. All of the surveys ended up on a platform at the University of Michigan that did all the data analysis and what have you. So it was a very rigorous methodology that we used for this. The response to the general population felt that one of the highest needs for a senior center, obviously, were seniors in a community center. 75% of the respondents said that seniors need a place that is either in a community center or is in some way associated with a community center that has a lot of activities beyond that demographic. So the some of the and Lenny, we're probably not keeping up on
I'm keeping up as best I can with you.
okay. So some of the things in the general population survey, some of the comments that were made. One was the importance of listening to people in the community about what they want. Not having political agendas involved in the process, be able to talk over and above politics and really get down to what the root causes of some of the challenges in the community are. And also transportation was mentioned by a number of people as being a challenge in the region. In the general population survey, 75% of respondents gave the highest value of 5 for a senior community center, and 13% gave a 4 out of 5. That's 88% of the respondents in the general population were highly in favor of community centers. That included a senior center. The student and youth survey, again, that was sent out through the school district to all the parents of students. Some of the things that young people talked about were in a facility, cafe, a snack bar, outdoor amenities for sports, possibly a fire pit, spaces for movies, for lounging, recreation, using technology devices. Learning new personal skills, academic and computer skills, career focused programs were also something that was mentioned by young people. And we asked parents as we sent out these surveys, and the school district sent out surveys,
to work with their kids. We weren't surveying the parents. We wanted the parents to help the kids to respond to the surveys. We wanted to find out what the population is interested in. They talked about a place to be with friends, movie nights together. As you can imagine, you know, young people like to congregate. They like to have a place where they can go, where they can meet their friends and have activities. Swimming was another one. People mentioned, students, youth mentioned, you know, we have Lake Huron, but where do we go for swimming lessons? You know, there's lakes in the region, so that was high. Just to kind of wrap this up, there's some tables and what have you at the very end. They won't even be able to read, the print's too small. But where do we go from here on this study? The final report is going to be coming out in a couple of weeks. I'm sure it will be put on the website here. We had a lot of support from the county and from the USDA helped us out a lot. MSU Extension helped us out a lot. A lot of community leaders helped us out a lot. So we feel that to the extent possible, the pandemic and given the difficulty of getting surveys out and online and what have you, that we do have a voice of the community here responding to, do we need a senior, a newer senior center that has more amenities? Do we need a community center that has facilities and programs and services for the entire community? The answers to those questions was absolutely. And we have a lot of good information. Not only do we need it, but what do we need in it? So I think that, you know, if I were living in this community, when I read this report that's coming out, I feel very good about what the community wants to have in its future and for its future. Because if things don't change, if they stay on the trend that they are now, starting in 2000 since the 2010 to 2020 and 2030, it's not going to get any better unless there are some things that are done within the community, by the community, and for the community. And you folks being here at this presentation, listening to this, you are the people that can make this happen. There's going to be some discussion and compromise and that's part of what has to take place to get the community behind it and provide for all of the people in the community, starting out with very young people, the youngest people, the infants, who in 50 years are going to be in we are, because I'm a senior chief. So thank you very much for listening. I will say that I worked with a lot of communities. I've done work in Alpena Marine Sanctuary in Harrisville, an incubator with Alpena Community College, with MEMCOG, and this is really a special part of the state of Michigan, Northeast Michigan, and there's a lot of potential here. And I think that it can be realized if everybody holds it up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Larry.
Can I ask the presenter a question or two?
Board, how do you want to proceed on that? I think since we could probably in between presentations do that. So if you'd like to.
I have a couple questions too.
Okay, all right. Who wants to go first?
I will.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I have been in possession of two of the surveys. I wasn't given the one for the leadership. And I was not given the one because I've been here for 20-some years. I'm not a new business owner. But the other two surveys, can you confirm that neither one of them had any questions regarding housing on those two surveys?
There might have been one, question about housing, but it was, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was maybe 0.3.
So really, it would, if someone were to say that your surveys would indicate a need for housing at all, would not be, you know, a correct statement. And then in our minutes back in June, you came and made a presentation, and our minutes say that you explained that the survey would be sent to targeted people. That's what it says in our minutes. Can you explain how you targeted people, or was that incorrect?
It was people, it was not individuals, it was students, youth, the general population, newer businesses, but there were no individuals except in the leadership survey, we went to the directory and we pulled out leaders, we wanted to get the leaders, but there were no individuals that were targeted.
Thank you.
I have, well, I'm a taxpayer. I volunteer here at the senior center, probably 3-4 days a week. I would like to know why I didn't get any survey. And I'm in this building a lot, and I had no idea that, I knew it was pointed out that Michigan, University of Michigan sent out surveys. But everybody I talked to, nobody got one.
Well, there were 350 surveys sent out by the school district. There were over 1,000 surveys that were sent out and distributed. There were, because the surveys were analyzed on the University of Michigan data platform, QR codes and links. So we weren't sending surveys out to the mail. That would have been tremendously expensive. It would have cost tens of thousands of dollars to get surveys out and back. So we relied on community groups. We relied on, I know that Lenny distributed hundreds and hundreds of surveys. Again, the school system. We relied on some of the congregations. We did the best we could, but there used to be city directories and things like that have everybody's name and address and everything else. That doesn't exist anymore. You can't go out and find individual people. You can't go to the tax rolls. So it's all I can tell you is that there were several thousand surveys that went out. I think we got about 900 and 1,000 surveys back, and the population of the county is 10,500, somewhere around there. So about 10% of the population.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'd like to know in your surveys, do you have any data or any surveys that went to senior citizens asking if they were interested in a standalone senior center?
That was not a specific question. I was just looking this up. I think almost 25% of the respondents on the surveys were in the age range of 50 to 65 or above. So there was a fairly significant response by that demographic.
But they weren't asked if they'd be interested in a standalone senior center, just a community center that would have senior facilities in it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Our public comment will be at the end of the meeting. We've already done them. Okay, so let's move on to the Sidock Group. We'll start with Bradley Butcher.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation to be here. My name is Brad Butcher. I'm an architect in Sidock Group. I live in Otsego County. I live in Otsego County, or have lived there for nearly half my life. And why did I choose Northern Michigan? Because it's a great place to raise families. I raised our 3 children there, who have some of whom have stayed in Northern Michigan and some have moved on. I started to practice 26 years ago up there and joined the Sidock Group almost 10 years ago. Serving communities like the county of Alcona, community of Lincoln, others nearby, Hubbard Lake, Harrisville, Glenny, Alpena, Grayling, Lewiston, and Mile. And our stretch from our Gaylord, we're a company that has 6 offices. Our Gaylord office covers from about Bay City north to St. Marie, where we have another office. Primarily in Gaylord, we are architects, but we're supported by engineers in our other offices as well. And we were invited 2.5 years ago to have a conversation, instigated by a contractor, incidentally from Alcona, who said he knew a fellow who had a vision for a community. We thought maybe we should connect, and that fellow was Lenny. And Lenny and I spoke. I was working from home back then, locked in. But Lenny and I spoke in late April of 2020 about a vision for a senior center in this community. And as almost every project we work on as designers and planners, project evolves, and it evolves based on community interest, a program requirement that just gets further developed, and funding. Oftentimes projects get reduced in size and scope because of funding. In this case, funding enabled this project to grow. And based on that, we have responded to a need driven by the board to consider other elements to this project. And we've responded to that need as we've gone along for the last 2.5 years with planning and design solutions that aren't final, but certainly progressive solutions that try to attend to or respond to program requirements driven by the senior community here at Alcona County Commission. And we're committed to this project. We consider this one of many projects that we do that are important for clients who are important. These are projects that matter for communities that matter, and that's the basis of the work that we do. We're happy to be here. We're happy to answer questions. Understand there's been an evolution not only in the project program and scope, but also in contracts supporting that work. But that's natural as well. And we're happy to answer that as well. With me is Tim Miller, who is the project architect, and Mike, if you want to introduce Tim, that's fine, or I can.
You just did, go right ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Fred. So my name is Tim Miller. I'm newer to Northern Michigan. I've been up here for about 5 years now with my wife and my 2 daughters, go to Gaylord schools. We've always vacationed, always loved coming to Northern Michigan, and we had the opportunity to come up here for a career position change for myself with Sidock. And we said, you know what, why not? You know, get up here at our younger age, where a lot of people want to be, that just aren't able to do it, is a real opportunity. And so we took that opportunity 5 years ago, and honestly, in being up here, as vested as we are in our community, and a number of boards and committees, we wouldn't move. We love Northern Michigan. The opportunities I've had with local communities such as yours, working in Mile, working in Sidock, working all the way to Traverse City, working through Costa, Bay Harbor, Sheboygan. I've had the opportunity to really meet folks like yourself. And to me, it was a welcome change of pace from dealing with the downstate hustle and bustle of Metro Detroit, where I've had 20+ years of practice. Northern Michigan's been great at projects that I've worked on for local communities, from township halls to fire stations, police stations, working for DNR stations at various different communities, large headquarters for our communities. We've had a little bit of everything, but the common denominator is we become part of the community fabric. We're working with all those stakeholders and the residents of those communities. And I think that's very important to point out is we're not a downstate firm coming up to a northern community, telling you what you need, telling you what you have to have. We pride ourselves in sitting down with those community leaders and stakeholders and asking, what do you need? This is what we recommend based on experience, however, it may not work for you. And through those discussions, we learn things from communities on why things work, why things don't work, or why potentially things need to shift with the times, the trends, etc. You're asking for a modern facility, a clean facility, a working facility. That's great, but there's other things that are also trending across the United States that seniors want in their facilities and their communities. It's our job to bring those to you guys and present them and give the board and the community the understanding of what those might be, and they may not have thought of or understood the ramifications of why you need something. So that's a little about myself and sort of how I process projects. On this project, don't tail off of what Larry's presenting. The project wasn't developed and it's not being designed in a vacuum. Right? not only Larry's feasibility study, his needs assessment, but on the housing side, and I'll talk a little why that was interjected into the whole thing. We had Ethos Development, our development partner, and all they are is a development consultant. Their experience is in multi-component projects, difficult to fund projects. They're a very outside the box thinker when it comes to going to find funding and where to get money from to develop a project and make a project work. That's what they do. Again, they are a downstate firm, quote unquote. However, they have projects all over Michigan, including up here, Sheboygan, Charlottesville, Traverse City, Alpena. They're working on projects all over the state. Their whole goal is to make sure this project gets across the finish line from a financial standpoint. And to help the board, money, us understand some of the intricacies of funding and what things trigger funding. And how to layer that funding so it works not only from a legal standpoint, but from a project standpoint, a revenue standpoint, and an operations and long-term longevity standpoint. They provided a market study through their market study firm, who goes out and looks at the region and looks at the housing report for that region and says whether the housing is a viable project or not a viable. Yes, initially we started off with senior housing. It rolled into multifamily housing, multifamily / senior housing apartment. Since then, we've gotten the hard figures back on the market study that said, nope, gotta slow down a bit. It's too much for the community. So we did. We took you from that. We listened to it and came back. And what you see now is 4 buildings of townhomes, not apartments. They're townhomes. They're attached, single family units, not apartments. And the way we've got split up so far was we created sort of a community within a community. We created a community for senior housing. So we have 2 buildings of senior flats, if you will, recognizing there's mobility issues with seniors and accessibility issues. A little more about myself, 15, 20 years of senior living experience. I've worked with affordable housing, senior living, skilled nursing, hospice, dementia, you name it, I've done it across the state of Michigan. From at-home adult foster care facilities, 200+ bed skilled nursing facilities. Being a younger fella, I understand seniors, I understand their needs, I understand the continuing their care. I've worked with many communities throughout the state. Our recommendation to money was if you're considering a housing component, strongly consider a senior housing. And through that course of discussion, we said, hey, there's an opportunity here for senior housing that isn't assisted living. It's also not apartments. It's still living on your own, but you have close proximity to a senior center. That was our recommendation. Board felt it was a good recommendation. That's how we proceeded. The other 2 buildings are family housing, which aren't necessarily for any specific age group. We're looking at additional funding for those that are not tax credits. It's a different funding program. It's a new funding program that is coming out, not tax credit based. It's not affordable. It's for the what they call a missing middle housing agenda, right? It's for that segment of population that might not be in single family homes, doesn't want to have an apartment. They're the middle, sort of that missing middle population where there's really not a lot of housing for it, and they base their funding or they base their criteria differently than you look at tax credits at full. That's a whole nother hour-long presentation. So what we did is created this mixed community, but still separated it, recognizing there might be seniors that don't want to live next to a younger family, and that might be a whole hours of the night. It's a walkable community. It has sidewalks, street trees, right? To really bring home that downtown old neighborhood feel, right? New urban, as we call it in our industry. So it really becomes a walkable, small community, not just apartments dropped in the middle of a class spot. We specifically looked at sight lines in the site, how you go into and access the site, how they relate to downtown Lincoln, how they relate to the schools, the community center, the health center, and how this is going to relate overall as a quote, hub for the community. So that's sort of an overall of where we got to today. How housing got into it was there's a process, right? From the time Larry started his feasibility study to where we're at now, it's been 2 years. It's taken that long to get results, and we still don't have a final version. Market study of 6 to 9 months, right? Meantime, the community wants their senior center. What do? Well, we as architects start a process, and I'll get into the process a little more. Through the course of that process, you're looking at funding, you're looking at how you're going to get these projects to be viable. One of them, we were looking at a USDA loan for the community center. Well, loan needs to be paid back. How are we gonna pay back the loan? We did not want to put a bond in another village out there, but here. So we talked with Lenny. I said, you know what? And Lenny said, what about a housing? Authority? I said, you know what? Let's bring on Ethos. Ethos is top notch and putting together outside the box thinking complicated deals. We brought Ethos on. Ethos said, you know what? If we make this a mission housing project, that can then have revenue generated to pay down the loan for that community center, thereby not having to have the community take out a bond. Great, excellent idea. Well, to do that, Michigan's got certain deadlines, right? Every few months, you get a different deadline. Well, we need to get going on this. In the meantime, while we're waiting for the results of the feasibility study to come back on the community center, that's going to tell us what needs to be in that community center. Let's get going on our housing funding application. If we can get funded on that, we know we'll have the money to pay down the loan for the communities. So we did. That's how the housing got pushed ahead of the seniors. It was a process, right? Through the course of that process, we ran into the market study that said, nope, too many units. So we had to go back to the drawing board and how to do a housing component that worked financially for the community. In the meantime, we got the preliminary results back, feasibility study. We're able to then shift gears back to the senior community center and start programming that again. So for 2 years, we've been doing this flip-flop based on funding direction, based on interest of program partners, feasibility study, market study. That's what we do. We have to balance it. In addition, the board comes back and says, we got to concentrate on the senior center. Hey, let's understand where we're going to go on the housing. So that also plays a role as well, what gear we're taking. And through that whole time, as the program's expanding, shrinking, changing courses, changing sites, we've offered contract modifications to work with the board's budget. Fair within their budget. And they even have points that asked us, hey, can you guys hold off on billing to work with us? And yeah. So I think it's important overall, big picture, 30,000 foot, to understand how we've been involved and how this project is taking shape and where it's going. We've contracted surveyors, we've contracted geotechnical engineers, environmental engineers. Of course, we've looked at local, but local isn't always the option. In the case of a site survey for topographical survey, the Dollar General had already done a boundary survey of the entire parcel so that they could break away their small parcel from that. That surveyor happens to be from downstate. Yes, we could have gotten a local surveyor to work, but more than likely it's going to cost you more for them to go redo the work that's already been done and then give you the additional work. So we contacted Meridian, who did the topographical survey, said, hey, you guys have already done the boundary survey for the whole entire larger parcel. What about just finishing just the parcel we need? Oh yeah, that's only going to be this much. So they were able to. So we have a tendency to not look at necessarily, okay, only go local. We'll look at local first. We're a local firm. We're Northern Michigan, right? We'll look at our local partners. But if those partners aren't the right fit for the project, for the client, or there's financial reasons to go elsewhere, we'll look elsewhere and talk about this. Geotechnical engineer, he's out of Catalina. We're out of Daly. Our other surveyors out of Sioux St. Marie. We also have partners in Bay City, some of our engineers that work, as well as our own engineers. So we're very much dedicated to the Northern Michigan region and the project status right now. We have development team partners. You back one slide.
Yep.
So as I mentioned, right now, the project status is we are currently in design. The contracts that we have right now, or like ACCOA has, if you look at the dark solid lines, those are actual signed agreements. We have a signed agreement with ACCOA. Ethos has a signed agreement. Where O'Brien Construction came in. O'Brien Construction is someone who I've got, and Ethos has got many, many years of senior living and multi-family living experience. We brought them on simply as a consultant at this time, no contract. That's the dashed lines. They're working with us contract free right now to provide consultation on budget, program, scope, size. Understanding this is going to go out for public bid for construction managers, where they'll be invited to the table. Same with Clark, same with anybody in Northern Michigan who may have a interest in doing a senior community center or senior or the housing. So that's who the players are at this point. So we talked about project and process. What this shows you right here is a timeline overlaid with our process timeline, or a process path rather, Going from left to right, we go from program schematic design to the design element, construction bidding, and then construction administration.
It's third page of this, of your package.
For those of you that have the packets, it's page 3.
You'll see a pink.
Only the board.
Dotted line.
Only the board.
Under the board, yeah.
That's currently where we are. You'll see a lot of things in orange prior to that. It's been a very busy 2 years for us, working with the board and design meetings, and we're still not out of schematic design, given the fluidity of the project, where it's gone.
You're right.
Thus, the numerous contract amendments, the contract amendment today, and I'll kind of talk about that. Once we are approved based on the scope where we're at today, we believe is a good, solid understanding of the scope of work for the senior center with certain community elements. Knowing the housing is coming later, we believe we're at a good point where we say, this is it, this is the scope that we'll go on. Now we can rip the rock on the actual design and start generating like actual hard plans, elevations, 3D images. So you guys can actually see what we're providing and start to provide your input based on that. That's our typical process. That gets into what we call design development. Once drawings are all approved, we've had enough community input where everybody's happy. We go into construction, and then from construction, we go into construction administration where we start overseeing whether they awarded. Construction manager, that's a term that it's been around for about 10 years. It really replaces the term general contractor. The typical process, we complete all the design documents, we put the project out to bid, you get your numbers back, and only at that point you realize you might be over budget. Now you have redesign costs, now you have schedule costs, and you may not necessarily be getting the product, if you will, that you initially wanted, because now you're having to cut costs, you're having to shave and really eliminate things where with the construction manager process, what would have been bid out at the end, we're bidding out a construction manager going now to assist us in the process, to assist the board in the process of budgeting through design. But after designing, you know we're getting what you want and you're getting budget. It gets to the end of design, now there isn't a bidding phase, because guess what? They've been bidding it the whole time. They're ready to go right into construction for the budget that's been established. So you save time, you save costs, there is no redesign. And then you continue with construction as you normally would. They're involved as a general contractor role, essentially at that point. It's really just the title. Everything else is the same. They still have one contract with ACCOA, all their subset of contract with them. It's only the fact that they've been involved on the design side, lending their experience from their subs, budgets, and current equipment costs and current material. Whereas we don't necessarily, we're not as attuned as their experience. So in a nutshell, that's the process. Next slide, Linda, please. So where we're at currently with the community, as I talked about, we have schematics, and they truly are schematics. They're still very open. But what we have is, after numerous meetings and calls and programming, we have a 3-page document, Excel sheet of things that should be in this center based on the feedback that we've had, discussion that we've had. Our experience with senior center is not our. And what that has resulted in is a project that has grown from initially 2 years ago to 10,000 square feet to 80,000 square feet at one point, with numerous community partners expressing interest. EA, Health Center in Michigan, there were numerous people came and wanted to be part of the space because they liked what this project was doing. Unfortunately, cost, funding, scale it all back. Now we're at about a 30,000 square foot building, 1 story we're proposing, again, for reduced cost, senior focused with some community features. And that estimated project cost right now, estimated project cost, not a hard project cost, is around 10.5 million. And that number is based on, again, market trends, current rates, and your neighbor next door, Alcona County, just bid a communities with senior function. That came in at $227 a square foot, which is real-time numbers. Project that out, and that which is where we're at with this project. This would also include some outdoor sports. We're looking at basketball, pickleball, tennis, all the way playground, a skate park, flash pad, rink. How we prioritize those are really going to be more senior focused, obviously. So you're looking at basketball, pickleball, tennis, and then the other ones can follow down as money allows. just the outdoor amenities alone is gonna be about 2.5 million, if you want to own it. Therefore, we have a budget which one of our priority related to this. On the right side, you can see some examples of work we've done as a firm, with community centers, rec facilities, community centers. So again, we're well versed in this. Next slide, please, Lynn. Okay, what you see here on the right is where we ended probably a year and a half ago, before the program changed a bit due to site restraints. The site moved from the Alcona Health Center site just north of that to where we're looking at now, just south of the Dollar General. And so that essentially is where we are now and where we're evolving back to, based on a multi-page Excel spreadsheet. And what that is really, it's a summary of spaces, and that's what's shown on the left. I've got some excerpts there. It really goes through and talks about support spaces, ACCOA administration, senior spaces, community spaces, fitness, wellness spaces, grounds off work areas, and that ultimately has a number of those rooms, the size of those rooms, the area of those rooms, and that generates a total. That gets us to where we currently are at 30,000-ish square feet. Included in that, we also have additional future spaces that potentially need to be considered. EDA has come to the table and said we would support a business incubator, whether it's cooking classes, whether it's a gallery space, whether it's business workforce development. That would be a whole other suite that could be added on in the future as part of the community center store. Lenny has said ACCOA has a number of vehicles they need to store. They prefer to store them indoors, right? I think 8 units. 8 vehicles in a garage is a good sized garage. That's additional cost that, hey, if we can push that down the road a little bit to a future phase, we can easily add that. Lincoln Food Pantry is, we'd love to have that as part of this project right now, but the senior elements where they are right now within this 30,000 square feet, that's not given to the common. So we've looked at budgets, we've looked at phasing, we've looked at how this is going to go together initially to get to the point that we are at. Next slide. So housing, right? I talked about shifting gears. We ended at this point here, which you see here, which is conceptual elevation, how these elements might look, conceptual floor plans of how they might go together. Mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, the multi-family, the family housing rather would be a mix of 1 and 2 stories. The senior side would be all 1 story. Again, talk about mobility, accessibility, universal design, right? So that's where we've left this, understanding as of a couple meetings ago, we're shifting gears back again, focusing on the senior center. Go ahead, one more question. So this was the first, or one of the first couple site concepts we had down at the Alcona Health Center, just to the south, the lower right side of the page. Alcona Elementary School is right to the left side of the page. In this concept, we had a larger community senior center at Farmers Market. We had multi-story senior housing. And over on the Alcona school site, we had the outdoor sports amenities. There were a number of issues, conditions, contingencies with this site that just didn't work. Ultimately, we needed to shift sites. The first, or one of the first site options we had at the new site. We said, okay, all in, let's go, let's see if we can fit everything. And we did. It was tight. It was 3-story multifamily, which even though we talked with the fire department, county and the village was acceptable. We were going to have fire suppression in the project. Ultimately, it just really wasn't. I think 1, what you as a community responded to, and 2, it was too many units. Once we got market straight, so we reduced size. Ultimately, that's where we're at. And again, it's not as refined yet because it's still very fluid. Really, this Excel spreadsheet that I've held up a couple times has really been firmed up in the last couple of weeks. And it's going to continue to evolve as we go through the design process that I showed you earlier. Again, our focus clearly now, again, is the senior center. Housing will follow as needed based on budget. The MEDC grant that we have does include housing. That was one of the conditions of the grant. It may not have been possible to even get the grant if it was strictly only for the seniors. They liked the idea of a community center with all these elements, and that's MEDC in the state of Michigan. So I think that's something we need to consider is how do we include it but still make it doable for everyone? Talk about our proposals a little bit to get into the contracts. And I say proposal because, they're really going forward, now that the project's evolved to the scale that it is, we presented to the board, it's money that we would recommend a actual hard contract. We are part of the emergency architect. Industry-wide, they put out this one set of protection documents. We call AIA documents, contract documents. They have, rather than a 4, 5, 6 page proposal, they're 20-some pages, and they're a formal contract. They have written proportion in it. They have protection for the clients in the states like Alcona County. They're protection for us as well. But either way, there's more formality in that, and that's what we presented to the board, understanding that there's concern within the community. Lenny has already said, once we give it to them, then they've had legal review it. We have no issue. It's a standard contract that most all our clients sign, and their legal looks at it. And typically there's no issue. If anything, there's usually something struck out, and usually it's not a big deal. So the idea is that even if the agreement was approved today, you would still get a formal contract following up on that for everybody's benefit. A little history on the proposals, where they've come from thus far. Brad mentioned back in June of 2020 was our initial proposal. January 21, the program grew up to around 80,000 square feet, as I said. That was an additional services proposal. And in January, the scope changed again to include. We agreed. We put the project on hold with the flag of the ability report and said we would start reviewing a housing option at really just an hourly basis as our firm was needed. And that would help ACCOA's budget. We have small increments versus a large contract. Later in 2021, around May, we really had that time what we thought was a one scope on the multifamily project. We issued a additional contract specifically for the moment. It was not executed because since then the project has evolved. September of this year was the first time we've actually had another authorized contract from the first one back in 2020, and that was for a 13,000 square foot senior community center. And so that was for a certain guy. Later in November 4th, what we're here to talk about today was an amended proposal for a 32,000 square foot senior community center with our assistance to help Alcona County procure a construction management firm. So rather than us being part of the bidding process later on for a general contractor, we've shifted it ahead in the time schedule to procure a construction manager, thereby not needing a bid later on in the project. At that same time, we also submitted a second proposal for the housing portion. So essentially at that point, there's two proposals on the table that would have superseded the original proposal back in June of 2020, or hourly agreement that we had. And that's what we were supposed to be here talking about today. Based on the November meeting, we received comments about certain verbiage in the proposal, some of the numbers that were in the proposal, and there were some other comments. The CM portion. So what we did is we took all those comments and combined them into a new amended proposal to supersede both of those. And that's what the board has in front of them today. That's the 12-6 proposal that we're calling an amended proposal. It truly is an amended proposal to the September community center proposal that they had already asked. In that now you have the community center, you have a construction manager process, and you have the outdoor amenities and the housing portion, all as separate line items in one proposal. You can review, approve them, deny them as you see fit. But in our opinion, that would take the place of the two November 4th agreements, as it incorporates all of the comments that you guys are. So in a nutshell, that's sort of the evaluation of where we are today from our scope, and our contract. I think the other thing to discuss, there was a comment or a question in the last couple of weeks regarding the AEP that was put on the grant application for one value and how it evolved to another value now, which is what our current proposal is. And all I can say to that is at the time we submitted the METC grant proposal, there was no confirmed scope of work. There was a general concept, a schematic, a certain size, a certain area, potential number of units. And that's what our fee was based on at that time. Since then, we've gotten more firm direction on community center, the housing, the outdoor amenities, whereby you would need to update and amend. Really, it's similar to ordering a meal at a restaurant, right? Ordering off the menu. You order a meal and it's one price, and you add a salad, a soup, bread, other items, dessert. There's additional charges for all those, right? And that's essentially what us as a professional service is yes, we gave you a price months ago, but that was based on a certain menu. Menus changed, meals changed, therefore the cost. Target schedule, I'll just talk about schedule roughly. Really, right now, we're planning and design, early planning and design. We're targeting, we've been working with the local zoning administrator. We're hoping for site plan approval at the January and February. At that point, we would be able to really get into full-blown design and bidding documents, hopefully have them wrapped up by the end of the summer. And prior to that, we would have a construction manager. And at the end of the summer, then, the intent would be that we'll be able to bring it up in the fall. That would be the intent. And within 18-24 months, the idea would be you'd have completed community centers and or housing also, if that goes. So with that, turn back to planning board.
Thank you, Brad and Tim, for that. Are there any questions from the board for the Sidock Group?
I have one.
Dolores?
In the last contract, it said that we are responsible for the land survey. But when we walked the property, it stated that that land survey has already been done.
Right.
It has been done?
Yes.
And so where's the statement?
I can't speak for where the stakes are, but we have the legal survey, we have the electronic file of the survey. I believe Lenny and the board have a copy of that as well from Meridian survey.
I've never seen a copy of it. But my question then is, did you contact any local surveyors? Did we have to have one from Detroit or Lansing or wherever they came from? Did you contact our local surveyors to do the survey?
So like I stated, in this case, we did not, because half the survey had already been completed by another firm. So regardless of who we contacted, it was going to be less to have that firm go back out, since they already had the information geospatially to be able to finish that survey. And they're already familiar with the site.
Wouldn't it be an advantage to include our local people that is going to be right here and voting on?
At that point in the project, no.
No?
It wouldn't be. Going forward, once the project gets into construction, your construction manager that you guys will hire will ultimately work to hire a local surveyor, because they're gonna be somebody that needs to be out there all the time. And they're not gonna want to drive from Traverse City, Sault Ste. Marie. They're gonna want somebody that's close to it. They say, hey, we have an issue on site. We need you out here this morning. They're gonna want somebody close. So once construction starts, they're gonna reach out to them. But at that time, for the initial due diligence, it was our call to save you ACCOA dollars initially, because it wasn't dollars ago. And that's the cost.
So when they start construction, they're gonna get a bid from somebody locally to put the shingles on, and somebody to do the plumbing, and somebody locally to do the electrical.
So part of the construction management procurement process, when we interview these firms and talk to them, and even in the document that will assist you guys with putting out the bid, a big part of it is local contractor engagement, is you are required to engage local contractors. Sometimes we even put in there, hey, we need to see evidence that you engage local contractors, give us an email that says, Smith's Plumbing is not interested in this, or whatever it may be. But that's a part of the process. You want that. They want to engage local.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dolores. Dr. Turk?
I do a couple, and I think you might have answered a lot of my questions that I submitted in advance, but one that I was hoping that maybe you could give a little closer to a yes or no answer was my question was will the MEDC allow ACCOA to use grant funds for a complete community hub, which consists of the center, housing, and recreation facilities, when we are not presently in possession of those funds to complete all three of these hub components? and don't expect you to be a complete expert, could you come a little closer to a yes or no? on
Sure.
that?
So my understanding from meeting with the MEDC folks and talking with money on the board is that there's $12.5 million that been earmarked for this project, right, as a hub. It's not all gonna get dispersed at once, it's gonna get dispersed on multiple draws. Is that what you're asking?
No, let's say, the most current estimate of the project that you said was 22 million, maybe? The last, and if we don't have $22 million, that's my question. How can we start to complete our obligations at the MEDC that requires the complete community hub, which is all three of those components? When we're not in possession of those funds, the MEDC allow that?
That honestly would be a question.
So that would be a question that I would like, I would have for the new building project subcommittee, but I think that can further to discussion when we deal with this.
Mr. Director, what I will say is that we will design and construct a project within whatever budget is available. And we'll prioritize based on direction from the board, what order those should be.
And I have one other question about the hiring of the construction manager.
Sure.
And I'm dealing with the contract that you gave us the other day, that you would put out a request for qualifications for the construction manager.
With a request for proposal.
Yes. Back in June of 2021, this board, or the board of ACCOA, not this current board, made and approved a motion to hire the O'Brien firm as the building project construction manager. In August of 23, this board says that O'Brien will be the logical builders, with Clark providing many aspects. As of right now, there is a letter on the ACCOA website from our executive director to ACCOA participants that on the third page says ACCOA has secured a contract. So my concern is, even though we haven't signed a contract with O'Brien, it sure looks like we have made a decision as a board to hire O'Brien as a construction manager, and I would be concerned about that. It doesn't seem like you would be able to put out a request for qualifications if this board still has a motion that we have agreed to hire the O'Brien firm. So I'm a little concerned about that when you say that you're going to send out bids. I don't know if O'Brien firm considers themselves to already have been hired and implied contract has been made with them. I have no idea, so I think that's an issue.
Based on our latest project update this last week, they understand that they do not currently have a contract and that they are not working under a contract.
I'll save the rest for when I make a motion.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, all three of you, for your presentations. Hopefully it answered some questions from the community as well, and the board here. So I appreciate you taking the time to come and present to us. Okay. So we have the motion earlier was that we would proceed based on the November 4th contract language.
I'm also on the presentation list.
I'm sorry.
I'm on the presentation list.
Oh, whoops. Skip right over. Sorry, Lenny.
So I'm just gonna do a quick summation because you've had, the intent today was to provide information to the board at the request of the board. You know, from previous board meetings and questions from directors, it was, I'm confused, I don't understand. Why not get the information from the sources? That's why they are here, because they have also been made aware, they were in our meetings and listening and being a part of the conversation. There's no problem with conversation. So we want to be transparent. We just got money. We just got this thing after this has been in conceptual phase for my time here as executive director, not to count the 10 years that this project has been trying to get off the ground since 2012. They've also been made aware of that information from the previous executive director and board, that these are the avenues that they tried in 2012 and failed. Tried to buy and do a standalone senior center, proposed it to do as a millage in taxes and to raise your taxes to do it. 2016, They proposed to do the exact same thing, tried and failed. Again, we went a different route, banging your heads against the wall 3 times in a row, expecting the same result is the definition of insanity. So we decided to move a different direction. And here it is. We are successful. That should be the end of the conversation. We got it. Yay. So that is where we should be. I understand that the direction is a little new, but a comment was made, and I think it's important. It's, why don't you hire an expert? Well, here's how I do management. I don't know everything. I don't claim to know everything. I hire people, experts who do, who know expertise in their particular areas, and I bring them onto my team. The board is a volunteer board. They're not going to expect or understand the nuances of the day-to-day operation. So they hire an expert, the executive director. That's how it works. I may not be able to handle the everyday operations of in-home services, so I hire an in-home service coordinator. Yes, it is for the board to be informed. And we bring these things to the board to review, and they have an obligation to make sure that they do review. So the summary of the meeting, the last meeting that we just had, we reviewed with all the players, all the partners, that the direction is to move forward with the budget that we have put in front. And I want to take your Excel spreadsheet and I want to explain a few elements in the building, because we just talked about a 30,000 square foot facility. 1,500 square feet of the building is for plumbing, help me out here. The first 1,500 mechanical supports IT. Exactly. Okay, so that's at 1,500. The next 3,500 is the ACCOA offices. Okay, in this building, to give you guys a scope of the building, we operate in about half that. That's about 5,000 square feet, top to bottom, non-handicap accessible. Okay, so we operate the entire program in about 5,000 square feet if you include here. There are no offices up here, so we work in a very tiny space. Okay, so now we're at about 6,000 square feet. The next allotment of space is 10,000 square feet to include a public use for the seniors gym that has 2 walking courts or two line walking track around 3 pickleball courts. I don't know too many young people that play pickleball. I heard it's a pretty topping thing. So it's 3 pickleball courts inside of that, with some other workout spaces of about 700 square feet. That's literally from this blue line on the floor back there, everything from wall to wall. That's about 700 square feet. It's not some monstrosity that we're constructing. Everything from the last 2.5 years, regardless if people think that seniors are not my passion, I've only been working in senior healthcare for the last 15 years. So I'm just saying that every step has been with seniors in mind. Also, being cognizant of where I live, understanding that Alcona County is not the richest county in our state. Why would I bring a tax millage to you and say, hey, this is what the senior needs? You all agreed this is what the senior needs. Now you guys get to pay for it. How many of you guys would say yes to that? Don't worry, don't answer. So, in conclusion, I'm going to say this. You can believe it or not, but the numbers are some close to where about $15 million this brain has brought in to this county in the 3 years I've been employed. Over $2 million of free food. Where did that come from? Magic? Come from hard work. $12.5 million. Where did that come from? These people. This person worked hard, tirelessly. These people went without a contract. That's professional speak. They worked for free. Okay? The people, ask the locals, come back son when you have some money. That was the locals. Come back son when you have some money. These people work for free. okay? Because they are just as invested as partners, as any partners that we could have. All with the same mindset of, you're not paying for it, but you want it, you need it. How do we help you? We've had countless meetings. The board has been invited to all of them, and I'm not gonna throw them under the bus. But it's optional if they show, but we show. We talk. I'm also a pastor. My knees hit the ground for this. My knees hit the ground in celebration when this came. Because this is a blessing, not a curse. We should be celebrating as a community. We have your input. We want your input. Your input's important, but we need to move forward. We have a small timetable to work with. So I hope that information is not a blindside. Information enlightens, helps you make a more informed decision. Everyone is ready to move forward with the process. The information that you have all requested has been provided to you to make an informed decision. These gentlemen have worked tirelessly. Larry, I cannot tell you how awesome that is that you put together a community assessment that we can use for the next 10 to 15 years. Everyone can use for the next 10 to 15 years because it's a matter of public record to get additional funds in this community. That's outstanding. And the amount of money from our general fund, not millage dollars, that we have spent has been a drop in the bucket to what we have received. Because we have been cognizant of cost. How can we do this cheaper? I think Sidock has heard me say, how can you do this on a poor man's budget? I have rich man's taste, but a poor man's wallet. And they've understood that. So I want you guys to understand there was some confusion of who wrote the contract. Meet these people. Who did the survey? There he is.
We don't need comments from the community that are heard. If you want to speak under your breath, speak under your breath, but we're not going to start a three-ring circus again this month.
So in conclusion, the project has always been senior focused. We have found and we try to work within the constraints of where the funding came from. They touched on it. We identified funds. We started this off. Hey, USDA, hey, county, how can we do this? How can we pay for this? Is there money for this? And the answers were no. In those avenues, we pivoted, we changed again, and we found a success and a pathway forward. So now, as a board, you are now able to make a decision about a pathway forward. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lenny. Any questions for Lenny?
No, I'm ready to make a motion as soon as you would accept one.
And
Let me make sure nobody else has comments.
I got a comment.
Oh,
I've been here for several years now. Even with the last director that we had. And I mentioned to her quite a few times about a new senior center here. Because this is not handicap friendly, lone seniors older that can't get around too well, like on a wheelchair. We've had medical doings up here. You come in, give blood and that. We had dinner downstairs. And they could go, either come up here first, go down there and eat something, or go down there and eat something, then come up here. But the only way they got to come up here was in a wheelchair. So somebody would have to push them up here. To get up in here, two people would have to pick her up in a wheelchair and bring him and set him on the top steps up here. And we put a thing together showing the building. I took pictures of the building and the bathrooms and everything to show how unfriendly this is. And went to the county when they had a meeting there and presented everything, trying to get help to do something with the senior center. Went to 4 or 5 of them, but that's about as far as anything got. And a lot of times when we had a severe storm, I prayed to God that a bolt of lightning or something would come down and hit this building. And then I know damn well that we'd get a new senior center. And now the opportunity has come. And see, I know the community is bigger than what we got right here, but it seems so that everybody's trying to fight it, or most everybody. Now, I'm 82 years old. I come in here all the time, especially the pop-up pantries. And people come pull in about 12 o'clock, 12:30, sit up there for 4 hours, don't do anything. And still coming down and see if they can volunteer to help fill the boxes and that, which would really help, and they don't. So that's how I feel about it. I understand Lenny's reason for having a community center, but I don't feel quite that way myself. And this part for on the last page there where they have all these different things. How many of you would like to bring your kids in, grandchildren in, to a place where you can teach them to cook, or we have someone volunteer instructor in that? My 2 boys, we lived up in Alaska. They had home economics up there. My oldest son, he made a suit, sold a suit together in that. It was brown. He wore it one day to school, and he said he'd never wear that again because everybody asked him if he was a turd. But they had cooking, sewing that. I don't think they have anything like that in schools now. So whatever we can put together, I think it really helped the community and it helped the kids also. That's all I got.
Thank you, Alan. Any other comments?
I do.
Yes.
What I would personally like to see, and I've talked to a lot of people out in the community, I would like to see a senior housing, not senior housing, a senior center be built and designed so that in the future, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, we could add on. But I would like the senior center to be focused on a senior center. And then as needed, put the housing on hold, put it in, put it in the background. Get this senior center up and running, get people coming back to the senior center to eat instead of delivering all these meals to people that can get out and come. Some can't, I know, but a lot of them can come down here to eat. They used to, they loved it, they enjoyed it. We need to get back to having the people come here, build a senior center with senior needs, and then add on as time goes on.
Thank you.
And in a floor plan that we can read. These are so tiny, we can't read them.
Leroy, I believe you had a comment. Was it you?
No, not really, but I would make a comment though that, you know, we're still here on the first contract. And it's nice to get all this other stuff now, but it's the first time I've seen it. Certainly like to have time to, you know, look it over. Regardless that, you know, this project went on like it is, I mean. Also being pastor chaplain, there's a book, the verse in Luke, I think it's 14:28. That says, a man that starts a project without the money to finish it is a fool. Right now, that's where we're at, it's a bunch of fools. So anyway, I'd just like to get on and vote on what we came here for, and then I would love to go over all this stuff later.
Okay, thank you. Any other, yes, Will?
I have a comment. The $12.5 million that the state has agreed to give us has strings on it. To actually spend that money, we must build a community center, which can have lots of senior related space. That's not a problem. We must build some housing and we must build some recreation space. If we do not do all three of those things, and the deadline is September of 2024, we do not do all of those three things, the money doesn't exist. We will be back in the same place as we were in 2012 and 12 and 16 with no money to build a senior center. I would be delighted. I'm 75. I would be delighted to have a fully accessible senior center if that was what we could have. Right now, we don't have that choice. The state is not interested in giving us money for a senior center. That's just the fact. The state is interested in forming community hubs. We can get what we want, a senior center, as long as we agree to do a couple of other things. That's our situation. You can either say, no, I don't want to see the $12 million. I don't want to have the senior center created. We will stick with this building. Or we can say, yes, we will go ahead. We will build a community center that pays chief attention to seniors. We have the freedom to do that. And we'll build this other stuff that's required by our contract with MEDC. That's where we are. It's as simple as that. Which contract we sign to make that happen? We should sign the new one, obviously, since it's been repaired, or we'll sign it fixed when it, if there are any problems with the newest addendum. But that's our situation. We can either agree to move forward, or we can say the heck with it all and we'll not build a senior center at all.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I'll take my comments for after a motion is made and we have a debate.
Okay,
Okay.
not from the community though. Well, we can't take community comment. Okay. I guess if nobody else has any comments, Director Turek.
I will make a motion to,
One
for lack of a better term,
idea.
reject the proposal that was presented to us 2 weeks ago and refer the most recent contract that we've just been given today, and didn't have a chance to look at, to the new building project subcommittee for examination to be taken up at our next regular meeting in January. So I would motion to reject the contract that's in front of us at this moment.
The 11-4, right?
The 11th and November 4th contract that was tabled and brought forward
November,
this
yeah.
meeting.
Vote to reject that as it is written. And have the new contract that was just presented to us today dated December 6th. Referred to the new building project subcommittee for examination. And presented at the next regular board meeting in January.
I would second that motion.
Okay, so it's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Jacqueline?
I have a question in regards to if that timeline is going to throw a wrench in everything else. Would a January,
22nd.
thank you, January 22nd date of decision be negatively impactful?
No, we are still proceeding with the community center, senior center, community center right now under the 9/22 agreement. Or September agreement, that was previous, smaller scope. So we're still working under that agreement.
And they'd be considering working for free, I guess.
No,
Yeah. Let me make sure I understand. Bob's plan here is we would move the latest submission dated, whatever it is, 12/6 or anyway, this is not to the building committee for its recommendation to the board on the January 22nd. That's correct understanding.
Yeah, so I can put in
That's fine.
two different motions.
No,
One to
I just,
reject and one to refer.
no, that's fine. I just want to make sure I got it.
I make one quick additional comment, so back to your question, Director. We would continue with the community center planning and design under the September contract. What we would do now, which is part of the current amended report, which had there's no community discuss it, construction and procurement process. To maintain timetable, because really time is of the essence. You don't want to get too far with design and find yourself in a position where you get backtrack. You have a construction manager start to dictate that you gotta cut this out, you gotta cut this out basically. But ideally, now would be the time you want to bring them on board, work hand in hand with us as we get into the design process, just to let you. So we would not proceed with that unless we have direction.
Any other comments?
Before the motion. The motion has been seconded.
It's been made and seconded.
And
We're
then
still
we're
discussing.
not voting. Are we debating the motion?
We're still debating the motion, yes.
Point of order, I'm sorry, Mr. President. Just a point of order. You got a tabled motion from the last one. You got Bob's and
Yeah, we
Roy's current. Just a recommendation, make sure you get this right, maybe you ought to get rid of the tabled motion. And if they want to withdraw theirs, and I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, and I think that's probably good advice so that we don't get,
We brought back the tabled motion from last. We reopened it.
yes. So that table motion,
We did already. do that.
We'll close that
We
again.
reopened it.
yeah, we reopened that
Now we need
motion.
to close it.
So now we need to move
Now
on.
we'll close.
Well, this motion would close it, correct, by rejection.
Well, I think we would have to have a formal vote to reject
That's what's on the table.
the untabled motion. And then follow Bob's motion. Well, I guess that is your motion, is to reject that agreement and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that. Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, so now that we're all confused. The table motion was to move forward with the November 4th agreement.
And it was opened.
And that was open for debate and discussion, which we were doing. Bob then made a motion to reject that motion for the November 4th contract to continue operating under the current contract by default, and then taking the new amendments to the building committee for discussion and recommendation to the full board. Is that correct, Bob? in a
I am
nutshell?
really confused, but
Yes.
I'm voting, however you want to phrase it, to not approve the November 4th contract.
Right.
Okay,
Whatever order we need to do that.
okay.
Pam,
Mr. Chairman,
I
why
already
don't
said
you
it.
just vote out the
Take it.
first one or vote no against it? Either have them remove the next one or vote it and then you can proceed to.
Well-
I'm sorry, that.
That's exactly what we did do. In his motion, he said that he wanted to vote to reject the 11-4,
Which was that motion?
which was that motion that we had pulled out from the table,
Gary's just
according to
suggesting.
my records.
Doing it
Gary's
separate.
suggesting not to combine the motion.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of semantics. It can make it a lot of smoother. I think just basically make a vote to reject the 11-4
Yeah.
proposal by Sidock, vote on that. Then create a new motion so that we can have a clear distinction of the new proposal of what we're reviewing on the January 22nd, so that all the community partners who are seated here can have some direction to go forward.
Yep.
So that is the suggestion made by Mr. Renaud.
I would tend to
and I
agree.
agree.
Well, here's
That's
the
as
problem
clear
with
as
that.
mud
We've already
without
got a motion on the table that
Well,
Dr. Turek and was seconded. So
well, the first, and that was probably my mistake. The first motion
So
needs to be
I will
dealt with.
withdraw that.
okay, you
You're
withdraw.
withdrawing your current motion.
You have to.
It
vote on
can
this
still
one.
be withdrawn.
With the agreement of the secretary.
With the agreement of the secondary, yes, it can. So you are withdrawing your current motion.
I have to tell you, I'm very confused because I can't
Yeah.
hear everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Are we all agreed parliamentary wise?
No.
Yeah.
We just want to reject the November 4th.
Right.
Proposal.
Right.
And
We
I,
make that so.
okay.
Okay.
And I will agree to reject the first motion we brought on. First and seconded, to accept that one just as that.
Okay, so, well, now that it's all clear as mud,
I know.
let's do it. Let's try and do it this way. We have a motion on the table that was brought up from the last meeting. That must be parliamentary wise be dealt with first.
Right.
I shouldn't have allowed your motion yet because we still had that motion on the table. So if you would withdraw the motion that you made a moment ago and you can remove after the vote, that's fine. And if you would withdraw your second, then we can deal with that tabled motion
Yeah, and that's what
properly.
he said.
Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay with you? Any discussion? I hope to God not on that. Okay, all right, so we have a motion on the table to reject the November 4th contract or to reject that.
The
Yeah.
addendum, the addended fees.
The addended fee,
Not the contract, the
the
addended.
addended fees, that's right. So we have a motion to reject the addended fees. Okay, now we better do a roll call on this one.
Am I seconding it?
Yes,
You did, yes. And a roll call, please.
Okay. Oh, Dolores?
I'm thinking yes.
Well,
It's
let's
really-
make it clear. If you vote yes, you're voting to reject the amended fees that were brought up on November 4th.
Okay, I'm gonna say yes.
Okay, Dr. T,
Yeah.
Jacqueline,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Mike,
No vote yet.
no vote for you, yeah, Roland,
yes,
okay. Leroy
Yes.
Okay,
and Pam, yes.
so it is unanimous. To reject the amended fees. Now,
Now another,
Mr. Director, you have your motion to do whatever it is you wanted to do.
And the November 4th resolution has been, proposal has been rejected.
Has been rejected.
So I would make a motion to take the December 6th amended contract, which we were presented today, refer that to the new building project subcommittee for evaluation, put on the agenda for a vote and further discussion in our January meeting.
second,
All right, it has been properly moved and seconded, and I'm not gonna try and clarify it because that's just
Don't
not gonna
try.
help. All right, so it's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion on the table?
I would discuss.
Director Turek.
One of the things that was brought up in the previous meeting was Director Schlicker had referred to in the back page of that contract, the next to last page, something about reimbursable expenses. How that they were going to bill to the client for actual costs plus 10%, and that included long distance travel, which I happen to agree with. But what was pertinent is that the executive director replied to her when she asked, why does that have to be in there? He replied exactly, because that is their standard language of contracts, because they do business. And that is the point. That is their contract made by their lawyer on their terms to benefit them. I would not know any businessman that would sign a contract under those terms without referring it to his own lawyer to examine. I was glad to hear the executive director say that if he does not have expertise, he refers that to somebody else. That is exactly what I would hope the new building project subcommittee does at some time before we're asked to sign a document. Get competent legal counsel. I don't mean my cousin Vinny type of lawyer who gets you off of a parking ticket. I mean somebody who is specialized in construction contracts. The other thing, there was no second closing.
Yeah, I don't think you can call those people monkeys anymore.
We're trying to mute so that everyone can hear you.
Continue.
Okay, go ahead.
That we haven't gotten a second estimate when we've gotten this previous proposal. And I would say at our previous meeting, we got 3 estimates to take down trees, and the bill was only $3,000. Does not make sense to me that if we're considering spending $581,000 is what was on the November 4th, that we would not at least do some efforts to determine if those fees are in line. So that would be my second thing. I believe I brought up my other concerns with that previous contract regarding the status of O'Brien firm and whether we have committed to them in an implied manner or otherwise that they are going to be the construction manager. I would hope the new building project subcommittee would take that up. And one other suggestion, if possible, as the executive director said, bring in people if you're not experts. Until Director Perrin was on the board, there was nobody with building experience. So I would suggest the new building project subcommittee try to bring in some people from the outside who have experience with this, building projects, either the harbor, either the new school addition, some kind of extra eyes to look at it that who have building experience and possibly some business experience and possibly some legal experience. So that's been done before, that a committee brings in some other people from outside the committee to help them before they refer it back to the total board for consideration. So I would bring those 3 things up. You can be against a contract without being against the project. So I'm not against the project. I was against that particular contract, and I would like to have time to evaluate the new contract.
Thank you, Director Turek. Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, let's do a roll call
So
vote.
a yes vote, could you specify just a yes vote would mean we want to not sign anything today, refer it and take it up in January.
Refer it to committee for a recommendation at the January meeting, correct?
A
So a yes vote would again mean that we are going to refer the amended,
The 12-6.
the 12-6 contract
12-6 contract
to the committee, to the new building committee
and Rollins
for
seconded.
recommendation to the January 22nd. meeting.
And Rollins seconded.
And that was seconded by Rollin?
Yep.
Okay,
All right.
roll call vote, please.
Okay, Dolores,
Yes.
Doctor
Yes.
Jacqueline,
Yeah.
Will?
Yeah.
Mike, you don't get to vote. Sorry, I just like saying it. Rollins, Rollins,
Yes,
Leroy
Yes.
and Pam, yes, okay.
And just for fair measure, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the vote is unanimous. The roll call vote is unanimous and the motion passes. So we will refer that matter to the new building project committee, who will, the chair will set a date for all to meet and then discussing the date and then make a recommendation at the January 22nd meeting. Okay? All right, perfect. We do have public comment time available. Before I forget though, for the board, since we're still meeting, the board has been invited to a Christmas party for the staff. And I would recommend, I went last year and it was a lot of fun. It's going to be Friday, December 16th. From a,
No,
16th.
that's not correct.
oh, well, that's what's on here.
That's different. That's a different one.
Oh, that's a different one. Okay, sorry. Too many parties going on.
As for the food bank,
Oh, that's the food bank one. Sorry.
It's Karen's.
So for the board and slash staff meeting,
Is that-
Christmas party is on
help me out, staff. What time?
the 18th,
Sunday.
Sunday, the
Sunday,
18th,
the 18th,
from 4 to 6.
4 to 6. So board, if you're available, please come and show your support for our hardworking staff. That would be great. And then also, is this invitation to everybody, Karen? Oh,
Board and spouse.
this is board. No, I'm talking now about the food bank one.
It's for food bank volunteers
And
and board members.
okay, so board members and food bank volunteers. 2 days beforehand, we can party again on Friday, December 16th from 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. here at the senior center. If you're interested, RSVP to Karen Hughes, who is the director of the food bank. And she can get you set up for that. Okay. Nothing can be clear today.
I have a question, Mike.
Yes.
Just so I'm clear in my own mind, Will was saying that we have to take this whole project up at the same time, the apartments and the senior center, correct?
In order for us to get the money, all three components have to
Have
be
to go up at the
completed.
same time. So does that mean that we can't concentrate and just do a senior center and do the apartments 10 years from now or 2 years from now? That means we gotta bring all three up at once. What happens if we get 3/4 of the way up and we run out of money?
That won't happen
That's
It
where,
won't happen, for
that's
sure.
where,
because
that's where
that's
Sidock said that they would only work within the scope of our budget.
right. And that's why you have a contract manager. That's why you have all of these things
Right,
setting.
but if we get this building 3/4 of the way up and we don't have any more money because the prices of plywood went up and the cement block prices went up and we're halfway done and oh no, now we gotta pay extra money. What are we gonna do?
Then you scale back in other areas. You say, okay, we don't get tennis courts. You don't get pickleball. You
So
don't
you
get,
got an answer for this then? You got a solution if that happens?
the team is
I hope
well
you're
aware.
right.
I make one other comment.
Yeah.
And just in the last couple of meetings, I think we've heard the executive director bring up pickleball several times. How many people play pickleball? How many people play tennis? Did
How
you
many
take
people
that into
lift
account
weights?
when you have factor in how many pickleball courts you have? Pickleball is faster growing sport in the United
Yep.
States. Tennis is on decline. I see one pickleball court that looks like it's sharing a basketball court with me. Could you take that into account also? Just anything about-
We're all seniors and we want it, right?
Set it up, vision board for it. No, just one, can I make one
Yeah.
comment? So, Director Turek, there's many meetings yet to be had on design. And we are going to encourage that any stakeholders that have a say in that are involved.
Hey, one more time. My hearing is a little bad.
We're gonna have multiple design committees going forward. Any stakeholders that will have a say in the design of this building are more than welcome to be involved in invited.
You got quite a few pickleball stakeholders out
Yeah.
there.
I've always wanted to play. I don't know if that counts or not, but I haven't played yet. Okay, public comment. Any further public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
One last comment? Okay.
You don't have to play pickle.
you know, we're talking about this new contract and whatever, and that's great, you know, I'd love to see all this stuff. However, I think, Rich Bray made, quite a point that probably ought to be checked into. It sounds pretty, important to me.
I'm sorry, Leroy, I didn't understand what point.
I was saying it might be good for the board that we check into, Rich Bray made a comment about our 501c3.
Oh, I see. I
You know,
caught
if we're
up.
going to
Thank you.
continue with this project to do all the community stuff and whatever, it might be real good for us to have a, you know, a definite, you know, legal opinion on that. Not Joe Bob, but, you know, or Billy
Gotcha.
Bob, but.
We'll,
Billy Bob's a local guy, right?
I guess that's a building committee. We'll take it up there.
Policies and procedure.
Or, I'm not sure which one.
Could be
it is.
both.
Okay.
All right, so that will be referred to committee. Thank you. Okay,
Mike,
yes,
the lady back there, she's been,
you waving her hand. You get to go first.
But I want to just commend this board and these gentlemen here for bringing good information to us, some facts for us to consider and all around. And I'm looking forward to seeing a vision in this county and some things happening. And I really commend all of you folks for doing hard work and taking some chances. And we're stepping out of the box a little bit. But you know what? We have to jump through the hoops. I've been through, I've worked for nonprofits, I've worked for courts, I've worked for systems, and we all have to work with what systems we are, in fact, we're dealing with in the realities of this county. But the thing is we don't take action. This county is not going to be in existence. We're going to have so many ghost towns. And I'm going to say, take a chance, people, and stop working against each other, work with each other. See you, folks.
Thank you very much for your comments. Rick,
Sorry, I talked.
that's all right.
I just want to clarify something everyone knows. We don't do the housing. We don't get the grant, right? There's over $9 million shortfall in doing the project. And I don't think that we can do this project, this whole project that satisfies the state and a senior center for $12.5 million. I'm not an expert, I'm just saying. To make it up in shortfall or cut things, you're not gonna be able to cut $9 million out of this project to get it done. Okay. The other thing I'm concerned with is this housing subsidized? Is this low income housing? Is it self-supporting? Well, it hasn't really been clear to me what this housing is. It was required to state that this housing is, okay? Just something that I'd like to know. Your survey, I'm a statistical guy. I think that the survey was not done correctly, and I'm not an expert, but when I talk to people in my area, they've never heard of a survey. And so for some reason, this survey that's done, it was focused more on younger people. I don't think we got a true representation of the community. That's a gut feel. You can argue with me, and that's okay. I don't like to point the thing that we got like a gun to our head. If we don't do this right away, we're going to lose the money. Because I don't believe that doing something that's wrong is worth going ahead of because the money is available now and not later. There's always chances to get it done right the first time
20
and get the money later. And then the second thing I want to talk to Mr. Avery is specifically is these gentlemen don't work for free. Okay, I'm a contract guy. These guys have, they propose contracts and give you a lot of information. You may not pay them anything. They're going to get their money back. And in their budget and their community, don't look at that timer. They know that they're going to have a certain amount of loss in their statistics. So we're not working for free. Okay.
Okay, your time is up.
sir,
Thank you, Rick.
you know, by his comments that I've heard in that, we'd be just well off to give the $12.5 million back to the state. Forget it.
If it's wrong, we should.
I want to say this,
I apologize.
Yeah, I'll get you.
Gentlemen, I didn't, I know you guys got a job to do. You were working under a lot of stuff and information that I feel that you weren't misled or anything like that, but you were dealing with a floating plan. You had nothing really specific to deal with. So I apologize to you gentlemen, I did nothing, and I apologize for my harshness. I should not have talked that way. And I apologize, hope you forgive me. Like the content of what I said, could have said and said in a better way, more concise. And I appreciate you for listening to me, but I do apologize to you gentlemen. I know what you guys gotta do. I used to plan projects. So I understand what you guys are doing. But there's been some loss of communication. And I hope that the board will do due diligence now before it's. So the thing I asked, again, I apologize for my harshness. I should have, in many ways, changed what I said, but I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jerry, and at least on my part, your apology is accepted. I can't speak for the board, but I'm sure they all feel the same way. So, thank you.
Can I make a motion, Judge?
Not yet. We have to allow the public to speak. Becky? Sorry, she was.
Debbie McKay, Barton City. I'm a former employee of ACCOA, so I have firsthand knowledge of how compassionate, dedicated, hardworking the staff is. Without what they do, many seniors would not be able to stay in their own home. They would feel hungry. They would not be able to get to their own medical appointments needed. What ACCOA does for this community is so valuable. We need what you do. You are so appreciated, and I just publicly want to thank you. I know many others feel the same way. And then I have two quick questions. Some time ago, I saw Mr. Avery on an interview on WBKB TV, where he said 12.5 million would be a big part of paying for the community hub, but the rest of the money would be coming from donations and investors. And I'm just wondering if this is still the plan. And if so, what has the investors been told they may be able to expect for a return on their investment? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you Becky.
That's okay. I get that a lot.
Executive Director, would you like to?
You want me to respond?
Yes, please.
For the love of God, people, we have a new proposal with a budget in hand. All-
President,
All of this, excuse me, you asked me to respond. Please don't interrupt.
it'd be nice if you'd respond. A little nicer.
Very well. I apologize, but here's the situation. Reaching back from 2000 to 2001 to old ideas when we were in the conceptualized phase is not where we are currently at now. We have presented to you for over an hour and a half of where we are at now. We have crossed the River Jordan. Okay? And the scripture that was quoted also, it says, take into account. That is what we have been doing. Taking into account of our budget, what we can do. I will point out one more time. We have taken into account, and I have only spent the money that we are looking to do, only spends the grant money for the seniors. There are very few community amenities in the project for the community center. Yes, I would like additional community stuff, but you know what? I'm going to go find more money. Because that is what the overall phased approach of this project is set for. So the shortfalls are the additional funding sources that we are trying to get for the phased project. However, if they don't happen, we build what we can build. That's it. If I go to the restaurant and I got $12 and it costs $11.50 for a burger and fries, I don't add a soda because that's all I got. But if I see my friend, he gives me a 5 spot and says, hey man, why don't you sit down and have one with me? Well, now I can add a soda. But if that doesn't happen, I stick with what my budget is on the menu. Can we follow that?
Thank you. Well,
Just for clarification, the, there are no investors in the current project. Well, I'm not sure it was the original proposal, but along the way, there was a proposal that did include investors. That is not currently live. It is dead. So there are no investors.
Thank you for.
thank you, Will. Judy?
Judy Frenchburg, so, about the money. So, first of all, ACCOA had an offer for land for free. That would have been a big enough piece to build said hub. Not only that land was free, it didn't have a bunch of trees on it that needed to be cleared, so that would save money. It also came with $60,000. Now granted, when you're talking millions, I'm guessing 60,000 isn't a huge portion. However, when you don't have all the funds procured to do said project, when a grant says you have to do all of this in order to get the grant money, if you don't have all of the funds to do everything, now you're going to get started and lose your grant money. We don't want to get into a situation where we've spent said grant and now we have to pay it back. Because then what's going to happen? You're all going to come boo-hoo into the county for money. And we ain't going to give it to you. Next, the presentations were wonderful. Brought up a couple of questions. I heard that MSU helped with this survey.
U of M.
MSU extension. It was specifically said MSU extension. I am involved with MSU extension. I know people who work there
20 seconds.
very
Judy.
well. I'd like to know how exactly that was. The other question is about bidding. Bidding on this project for local contractors. Bidding as you go. How is that bidding, you know, for our local contractors? I'm familiar with bids for things like bridges. My husband builds bridges. The bid comes out from the county, typically the year prior.
Thank you, Judy. Gary. I know you've been trying.
Mitchell Township, since we turned this kind of into a Bible study with the minister and a chaplain. Genesis 11 comes to mind about the building of the Tower of Babel. So far, we've managed to split the community and the language quite a bit. It scares me that government funds are coming in. We keep doing things that aren't supposed to be done. This really should be not a government involved thing. It should be a community thing, exempt of the government. But you know, we're going to continue to do things our own way until we wind up our own self-destruction, and that's my personal opinion. Kind of following that, you know, our government doesn't function the way it's supposed to. Everybody wants to do everybody else's job. The church doesn't function, the family doesn't function. And we're going to build a project, and it just, I would really exercise caution on this.
Thank you, Gary. All right, did I see another hand?
Kevin Lincoln, I too would like you guys to check with the IRS, make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's when this grant money is involved. I feel like for a senior center, you're kind of selling our souls. All we want is a building. You can do quite a bit with $60,000. It's a great start. The land's free. When you get everything else involved, and then they can get more people involved and more people involved, then they all come in and tell us what we're gonna do. Right now, we don't have that. We don't really want that. I don't know anyone that really wants that. We have people, we have NEMSCA, we have Habitat, we have other options for housing. So just to get a senior center, you're forcing us to go into it. I've lived here since 78. My parents brought me up here. They started a business. Everybody I went to school with had to leave the community to go get jobs, and they're in their 50s, early 60s, and they're trying to come back up north because this is where we all want to be. But it's a reality. It's been a reality since the 70s. It isn't going to change because you guys build this hub. The hub is not the answer to bringing people, young people, keeping them here to work. It just doesn't work that way. Self-employment does that. You're able to do that if you're a farmer, or you can build your own business. But you're not going to get it by building it, this hub. Just because you build it, they're not going to come and they're not going to be able to stay. I think you're selling our souls for a building, and it saddens me.
Thank you. Did I see another hand somewhere? Rich, and then Bill.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your presentations, Mr. Avery. You summed it up, really helped. And I'm not against this community center. I've said it over and over again. And there is a way that I know of that you can change your IRS status and maintain your tax exempt status. But it's not going to be popular with the rest of the people that stand behind me. And it might not be popular with you. But you would have to change your bylaws and your mission statement to include community, which would then go to Alcona County Commission on Community / Aging. That's legal. You can do that. No recourse, no loss of your IRS status. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that. But I think that the community wants to know that within that block, they're going to have a place for seniors and seniors alone. And I hope you understand what I'm asking here. A place where if we want to bring our children in, we can, or grandchildren, but I think this building is set up for us. To your survey, you said that 25% of 1,000 were age citizens. That's 2.5% of the 10,500. That is 262 people. There are 4,800 senior citizens here. They were not targeted. They were not asked about this. That's why you get the outcry. That's why you get the outcry. To do a pure survey and target the people that are concerned with this, you have to target those people. And I mean that with all due respect. And as a college professor, a doctor, you know that. This didn't cover
20 seconds, Rich.
Thank you. This didn't cover the age community. 2.5%. That's 262 out of 4,800. And that's why none of us got a survey. That's why we're upset, Mr. Attorney.
Understood. Thank you, Rich. Bill.
So, one carousel, actually, when we address change. Recommended to the board. I heard Mr. Miller refer to, he's been in touch with Mr. Avery. He's been in touch with Mr. Avery. He's contacted Mr. Avery. You're the board. Does Mr. Avery work for you, or do you work for Mr. Avery? Okay. The other thing I'd like to really bring up to protect each and every one of you, and I only know a few, is I don't think you'd want to lose your farm. I don't think you'd want to lose your business. I believe in the best interest of the board, you hire an attorney to sit into these meetings. And like, there was so much confusion with the motion. If the motions are not made right, that's a violation of the Open Meeting Act. That can result in a lawsuit. Counties don't want no more lawsuits. I don't think you guys would want a lawsuit. So who works for who? Who's protecting you guys? Saying, no. You can't make a motion that way. You have to do it this way. This is a roll call. This is just a yes and a no. Aye, nay. We don't need a roll call for everything. But yet there's some things that you guys approve that need a roll call. Those are all violations of the Open Meetings Act. So my advice, as ex-president of the village for many years, and on the board for over 20 years, that you guys would consider hiring on a professional attorney. You know, such as, I've heard rumors in the village, and I'm well known in the village, that Mr. Avery didn't need permission to buy that property. He did it on his own. That's spending taxpayers' money. That's a board. I hope this rumor is false.
Seconds, Bill.
I hope this rumor is false, but if that's the case, who give Mr. Avery the jurisdiction to spend that money? The board is supposed to be working for the taxpayers. Just a question.
Thank you, Phil. Just a clarification too, having a roll call vote is never a violation of the Open Meetings Act. The only reason I did so many today is because I knew there were going to be contested votes. And that way it's all on the record and we're not trying to do it by voice. So just as a clarification, thank you.
There again, an attorney could present that.
Yeah. Anybody? Hope you're scratching your neck. Okay, I thought. Lisa.
Lisa Curran, Harrisville Township. Just want to say about the incubator project. I know it's a great idea and it sounds wonderful for starting up new businesses, but I think Mr. Molnar also did a feasibility study on the incubator project in Harrisville. And that didn't actually turn out like an incubator project. There's really just one business in there now that I know of, maybe another Chamber of Commerce had it, but I mean, that was a great idea also. Let's get small people business in here, not small people, small businesses. You know, grow their business, move out to some of our empty buildings, move into this community, have their businesses, but it never turned out that way. So even though an incubator project might sound good for this community center, we've already tried it once, it didn't work. It doesn't mean we can't try it again, doesn't mean it's a possibility. However, that one didn't exactly turn out like an incubator project was supposed to. So I would say, maybe that's not the right thing for this community. Maybe something else would be better instead of using like an incubator project. I don't know what, but I'm just saying we tried that, didn't work. So maybe that's not something we should consider again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other community comments? Yes.
For the township. I want to know what the exact difference between townhomes and apartments are. Growing up, I'm from Jackson originally. You could rent townhomes just like you could any other apartment. They were considered one of the same. So I would like to know what your official definition between the two are so we can further understand and get further clarity. And I also want to know, you said you're using Mishta's missing middle program. Is there an official name for that program? And if so, what that program is? I also wanted to point out in your slideshow, for the second presentation with Sidock, it was showing that 10.5 million was used for the community center and things, whereas 2.9 million is being used for ancillary things like the football court, blah, blah, blah. That already goes over the 12.5 million. I know we're saying we can remove some of that. That's cool. I also wanted to say, I'm a business owner, of 3 businesses actually, and we moved here in 2021 of January 2021. And we never received any sort of survey to, you guys are talking about like new business surveys and stuff like that. Never seen it, throwing it out there. I think that's it for my time. Oh.
You still got 40 seconds.
Okay. I just want to let you all know that technical communications can be FOIA'd. And so that includes cell phones and smartwatches and things like that. So please be aware of your meeting and stuff. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jess. Still got 30 seconds left.
Oh my goodness, no, okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Make that motion.
I will second.
Rollin made the motion, Jacqueline moved. Any discussion? Please no. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? We're not going to do a roll call. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. This meeting is adjourned, 1:03 PM. Thank you, folks.